MSc Data Science, Data Management and Analysis. We have another one, MSc, MPhil, PhD, Economic Policy Modeling. And then we have just had approval for the MSc, MPhil, PhD, Data Science and Economic Policy. So please, this is what you should be doing when you graduate. Tell a friend about our programs here. Next year, God willing, we'll be rolling out 3 additional undergraduate programs. Dynamics will be one. Then we have data science analytics for those interested only in data science. And then for those who are also interested in business, we'll be doing BSc economics, business, and data science. 3 additional undergraduate programs. I thought the students would be clapping to hear this one. The other one that you should be excited about, students, from next year, January, we're doing short courses to help any one of you who would want to learn something about data science. We actually do it Saturday mornings, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. So if you want to learn how to use R, that's where to go. If you want to learn how to use Python, even Excel, anything, some of the tools that we use in data science, we're running short courses for you. It's free, actually. Saturday mornings, 6:30 to 8:30. I'm saying it because I have the platform. This is not what I should be saying now. I should be telling you about our dean who will give us the welcome address and also who will introduce the acting provost for today. Thank you so much for coming. I'm hoping that we'll converse or we'll all bring our suggestions and contributions on the subject of what's the theme? From macro stability to inclusive prosperity. Data-driven strategies to implement Ghana's 2026 budget. So please, that's the thing. Feel free to ask any question. I was told that GRASAC helped us basically to bring our graduate students here, and they would want to make a few remarks. And because George is here and Mr. Tvucc is behind me, he made a statement when we met with the registrar. Everything that is happening here has been put together by the kind courtesy of the Directorate of Public Affairs. We're sincerely grateful to Mr. Tvucc himself and his team for giving us this platform to organize this roundtable conference. Thank you. Let's enjoy our program today. God bless you.
Thank you very much, HOD Professor Emmanuel Asma. GRASAC President, kindly come and give us your brief remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, GRASAC is proud of the sponsors. Let's do it for them.
Thank you very much, our ever able MC. Prof. Dean, please permit me to stand on already established protocol to give a short remarks. A very good morning to us all. On behalf of Graduate Student Association of Ghana, UCC, I am honored to welcome all of you to this important roundtable discussion following the presentation of the 2026 Budget and Economic Statement. The collaboration between GRASAC, UCC, and the Department of Data Science and Economic Policy reflects our shared commitment to promoting informed dialogue, evidence-based research, and meaningful student participation in national policy conversation. As postgraduate students, understanding the data behind the budget is not only essential for academic pursuit, but also for shaping the policies and decisions that affect our society. On behalf of the Executive Council, I encourage all of us to engage actively, ask questions, and draw insights that will enrich our research and contributions to national development. As we all know, as postgraduate students, we are equally partners to national development. So this discussion is going to help us in our research work. On this note, I want to thank you and then wish all of us a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
The applause is feeble. GRASAC President. Mr. President, we are grateful for your brief remarks. It's now my pleasant duty to invite the Dean School of Economics to also tell us a few words. Shall we welcome Professor Dasmani? Please, the audience, apart from listening, you'll be clapping. So do it big and bigger.
Thank you very much. Panel members, colleagues from academia, students, press, media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all on behalf of the School of Economics and the entire University of Cape Coast to this important roundtable discussion on Ghana's 2026 budget statement. Today's dialogue provides us a vital platform to reflect, debate, and propose actionable, data-driven strategies to ensure that Ghana's pursuit of macroeconomic stability translates into tangible, inclusive prosperity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, Ghana's economy has undergone significant policy adjustment aimed at restoring macroeconomic balances. Through fiscal discipline, monetary tightening, and structural reforms, signs of recovery have begun to emerge. Yet, as we all be aware, macroeconomic stability is not a destination. It is really merely a foundation. The true measure of our economic success lies in our ability to create jobs, reduce inequality, and improve the welfare of every Ghanaian. The 2026 budget statement thus presents an opportunity for us to take a deliberate, data-informed steps towards inclusive growth and shared prosperity. The theme of this roundtable discussion, from macro stability to inclusive prosperity, a data-driven strategies for implementing Ghana's 2026 budget, is both timely and profound. It captures the essence of what our national economic conversation should be about, moving beyond fiscal consolidation towards sustainable, people-centered, and transformation. It reminds us that sound economic management in today's world must be anchored on evidence, analytics, and strategic coordination between policy and practice. At the University of Cape Coast, particularly within the School of Economics, we take pride in our contribution to national policy dialogue. Our research and academic training aim to produce economists who are not only understand theory, but also apply it to solve real-world problems. This roundtable is part of our continuous effort to bridge the gap between the academic inquiry and policy implementation. By bringing together experts from government, academia, and the private sector, we reaffirm the university's commitment to supporting Ghana's development through data-driven policy and relevant research. Distinguished panel members and participants, as we emerge in today's deliberations, let us focus our attention on three key dimensions of Ghana's development agenda: data-driven fiscal policy, the role of accurate, disaggregated, and timely data in guiding fiscal decision, monitoring progress, and ensuring accountability, policy coordination and implementation, the need for synergy between fiscal, monetary, and structural policies to sustain economic recovery. 3, equity and inclusion, ensuring that the benefit of stability reach all segments of society, particularly women, youth, and vulnerable communities. These are not only merely concerns, they are central to the realization of Ghana's medium-term development goals and sustainable development goals. We are also grateful to the university management, particularly the acting vice chancellor and his team, and the academic affairs for their encouragement in positioning the University of Cape Coast as a thought leader in economic policy discourse. To our distinguished panelists and discussants, We are grateful for your presence and for unwavering your expertise to enrich today's conversation. To our students and participants, I encourage you to listen, engage, and contribute meaningfully. Your ideas matter, and they form part of the next generation of evidence-based economic leadership our country needs. Once again, I will warmly welcome you all to the University of Cape Coast and to this important intellectual exchange. May our deliberations today inspire pragmatic, data-driven policy that move Ghana steadily from macro stability to genuine inclusive prosperity. Thank you all. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dean. And as we heard, Dean implore all of us, our contributions matter. Please listen. When the time comes, you contribute or you ask questions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I believe that you agree with me that we need someone to sit and ensure that things are going well. Professor Emmanuel Tinkrine, Dean of School of Development Studies, to chair our program. So if you agree with me that he can do it, please let's do it for Professor Tinkrine. And he will let us know that he has accepted it. Thank you very much, Professor, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, today I'm acting as the Provost of the College of Humanities and Legal Studies. Unfortunately, he could not be here, so he asked me to chair. Now, I accept to chair the program because, you know, School of Business is like our brothers, okay? School of Economics, I'm sorry. School of Economics, they are like our brothers, so even if the Provost had not asked me and they had asked, I would have been honored to chair this august program. Thank you very much. I will read a speech that was given to me by my Provost, okay? When I was asked to come here. So moving on, I'm just going to read exactly what I've been given. Okay. So deans, directors, colleague faculty, distinguished invited guests, colleagues from government, civil society, the private sector, the media, our students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege as the Provost of the College of Humanities and Legal Studies to welcome you to this roundtable on Ghana's 2026 budget statement under the theme From Macro Stability to Inclusive Prosperity, Data-Driven Strategies for Implementing Ghana's 2026 Budget. On behalf of the College and the University of Cape Coast, I thank you sincerely for making time to join this important national conversation. Ghana is emerging from a period of pronounced fiscal slippages and macroeconomic turbulence. The fiscal consolidation agenda set out in recent budgets with front-loaded expenditure cuts, stricter fiscal rules, and a focus on primary surpluses has begun to yield results in lower deficits, easing inflation, and improved indicators of macroeconomic stability. Yet, as the concept note rightly stresses, progress on the aggregate does not diminish the urgency of the challenges we still face. Stubborn poverty, particularly in the north, high youth unemployment, and large numbers of young people outside education, employment and training, and persistent inequalities in access to economic opportunity and basic services. At the same time, government has launched a bold portfolio of flagship initiatives: the 24-hour economy, the Big Push infrastructure plan, the Women's Development Bank, national apprenticeship and entrepreneurship schemes, digital jobs, and rapid industrialization programs, explicitly aimed at turning macro stability into inclusive growth, decent jobs, and reduced inequality. The 2026 budget statement will be judged not only by its macro fiscal targets, but by how credibly it links these programs and the resources behind them to real improvement in people's lives. All over the world, roundtable discussions bring together experts or stakeholders to engage in a facilitated conversation on a specific topic, sharing knowledge and perspectives in a collaborative atmosphere, aiming to generate insights and solutions. This roundtable has been designed to speak directly to that challenge. We are gathered to deepen our understanding of Ghana's fiscal economic position as we head into the 2026 fiscal year, to interrogate the realism of the fiscal consolidation path and the credibility of the budget, to reflect critically on the design and implementation of flagship programs, and to think carefully about how these policies are affecting poverty, inequality, and job creation. Equally important, we are here to explore how stronger data systems and analytical capacity can make budgets more transparent, more accountable, and more effective in delivering inclusive prosperity. In doing so, we are drawing deliberately on a rich mix of perspectives: long-term national development planning and SDG alignment, parliamentary oversight and budget credibility, macroeconomic management and fiscal monetary coordination, the role of the financial sector in supporting consolidation and private investment, and rigorous data-driven analysis of poverty, inequality, and labor market outcomes. The expectation is that today's discussion will move beyond slogans to a nuanced, evidence-based appraisal of where Ghana stands, what is working, what is not, and what must change in the design and implementation of the 2026 budget. For the College of Humanities and Legal Studies, and particularly for the Department of Data Science and Economic Policy, this engagement reflects our core mandate. We believe that public budgets are not just mere paper documents. They are instruments through which a society expresses its priorities, manages trade-offs, and pursues equity across regions, genders, and generations. Our responsibility as scholars and practitioners is to help ensure that these choices are grounded in sound evidence, robust analysis, and honest reflection on their distributional consequences. We therefore hope that the conversations today will generate clear, action-oriented insights that can support policy makers, clarifying the strengths and weakness of the current fiscal strategy, highlighting practical ways to strengthen implementation capacity, drawing out lessons on social protection, poverty reduction, and regional disparities, and identifying how the financial sector and private enterprise can more effectively partner with the state to unlock investment and jobs. We also expect this roundtable to contribute to a stronger culture of collaboration among government, academia, civil society, labor, youth groups, and development partners, and to feed into a concise policy brief that can inform the ongoing budget process. Let me acknowledge with appreciation our distinguished panelists for accepting our invitation, and the organizing team from the Department of Data Science and Economic Policy and the School of Economics for their hard work in putting this event together. Above all, I encourage all participants to engage candidly, yet respectfully, to question assumptions, and to keep at the center of our deliberations the lived realities of Ghanaians behind the statistics. With these remarks, I warmly welcome you once again to the University of Cape Coast, the best university in Ghana and West Africa, according to the 2024 Times Higher Education Rankings, and look forward to a rich and impactful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are grateful for reading exactly what the Provost gave you for your reading and our understanding. Chair, we are grateful. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, now that Chair has taken his seat and accepted to steer affairs, it is my singular honor to let you know those who will be doing as honest by their presentation and providing answers to questions that we pose to them at the end of their presentation. I have on my list Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah, MP of Osi IRB and Ranking Member, Economic and Development. I believe you know this man. And to some of our students, leaders here, the person I'm going to mention was once your SRC president. So do it for him before even I mention his name. Therefore, let me do my work. He is Professor Sharif M. Khalid, Associate Professor of Accounting and Finance and Economic Advisor to the Vice President. I also have on the list Professor William Gabriel, Bravo Institute. Prof, I didn't know of the Gabriel. Associate Professor of Economics, Department of Data Science and Economic Policy. On the lighter note, when I came to the first year, he was my TA. Raymond Elikplim Kofinti, Senior Lecturer, Department of Data Science and Economic Policy here at UCC. And also another UCC affair, Courage Boti, Manager, Macroeconomic Research and Investor Relations and ESG, GCB Capital. So ladies and gentlemen, these are distinguished personalities who are going to do us the honors. And for our moderator, no other than Dr. Kanta. Dr. Kanta, my work is done for now. We are in your hands to steer us to the end of our discussion. So let me bring you the microphone so that you do your work. All the best.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So we are going to have a conversation with our panelists. They are going to have 10 minutes each to give us some briefs about specific issues within the budget statement related to their field of work as well. Then afterwards, I will ask them some few questions. Then we'll open up for all of you to also ask some few questions for them to respond to. So I'm going to give you a brief about what each of the presenters will be talking about, our panelists here. We'll start with Professor William Insedu, who will look at how the 2026 budget statement aligns with Ghana's development and the sustainable development goals. Then we come to Honorable Kojo Nkrumah, who will look at fiscal consolidation, parliamentary oversight, and budget credibility in relation to the 2026 budget statement. Then we come to Prof. Sharif Mahmood, who will look at macroeconomic stability, implementation strategies for the 2026 budget statement. Then we come to Mr. Courage Boti, who will look at financial sector support for fiscal consolidation, investment, and private sector growth. Then Dr. Rebon Kofi Nti will look at moving from policy design to impact, data-driven insights on poverty, inequality, and job creation. So these are the main issues that our panelists will be talking about. I'll start with Professor Insedu, who has 10 minutes to give us a rundown of the issues. Then I move to Honorable Kojo Nkrumah. Then after they are in presentation, then the conversation will start. So, Prof.
Good morning, distinguished invitees and family. I call everyone a family. My task is to look at whether the budget statement and the instruments that we find in the budget statements are aligned to our medium-term development policy framework and our long-term vision 2057. I think some of us may not be aware that we have a long-term vision. We want to attain an upper middle income class. We want to belong to the group of upper middle income countries. Okay, so I'll first start by just giving a brief overview of what goes into the government's development strategy. As we all know, we know that the incumbent came in with what we call the flagship policy called the 24-hour economy. And we also know about the big push infrastructure plan. And what are they trying to do? They just want to focus on attaining what we call one of the industrial hubs in sub-Saharan Africa. So the key targets are to encourage factories to run 3 shifts as a way of generating jobs, creating jobs, and increasing exports so that we build a resilient economy. And it also targets essential public services, or what we call the high demand public institutions. And then it also targets the creative arts and tourism industry. Then we also look at the big push, the famous big push. And the big push basically, if you look at the budget statement, 2026 budget statement, what they did was to give more investment injections into the road subsector. Of course, the road subsector took the chunk of the capital expenditure, what goes into capital expenditure. We also have the structural economic reforms, basically focusing on attaining fiscal discipline, making sure that the primary balance of the country is at 1.5% of GDP, and also shoring up our revenue mobilization efforts, making sure that we attain what we call an efficient and tax administrative sector. And then urban transformation, which includes the green cities, building a new city because we think that some of the capital cities are congested. So we want to, the state-of-the-art infrastructure and modern systems. Okay, then we have the human social development, and then we have the governance, good governance and anti-corruption as part of the targets for the 2026 budget. Now, my task is to determine whether what we have in the 2026 budget statement aligns with the medium-term development policy framework, and whether it would help us attain an upper middle income country status. I thought I was going to project my, nobody came to me, but it's okay, I'll still read it. That is fine. So I'll just start by first, I'm not going to talk about everything that we find in the medium-term development framework, but I'll just pick the popular ones. What we call the economic transformation and resilience, which is Vision 2057. The budget looks at accelerating economic transformation and job creation. That is shifting from what we call consumption to production, which is part of the flagship 24-hour economy initiative. Some substantial amount of money have been allocated to this, which means that if you talk about the extent of alignment, that means that a lot of emphasis is being given to this sector. So there is direct funding for what we call the big push infrastructure plan, which is the latest investment in national infrastructure, trying to stabilize the energy sector. And we also have quite a substantial amount of money allocated to this sector. So the sheer scale of infrastructure spending is a direct translation of the big push promise. So the whole idea is to have a resilient infrastructure which would drive the 24-hour economy initiative. Then we have the human capital development, which is a long-term, part of the long-term goal, Vision 2057 goal. That is to, under that too, we have, if we take the budget, 2026 budget statement, we see that there's a section on strengthening social sectors for inclusive growth. And that also, some amount of money is allocated to that. And we can comfortably say that in terms of extent of alignment, it maintains key existing social investments and introduces new targeted social protection. So there is emphasis on Women's Development Bank. There's emphasis on other social protection schemes like the health scheme, social protection scheme. I want to move to, then we also have the macro stability and governance, which is part of the medium-term development policy framework goal. That is to attain prudent fiscal management. And in the 2026 budget, we also talk about consolidating macroeconomic stability, attaining fiscal discipline, achieving some surpluses, which goes to savings for the country, and then ensuring prudent debt management, right? So these form the bedrock of the entire plan. I also want to talk briefly about the Sustainable Development Goals, whether the 2026 budget is the instruments within is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. But I want to briefly mention that the SDGs, commitments of Ghana is committed to achieving all 17 SDGs, but places special emphasis and investment on certain goals, which I'm going to just mention briefly. One is economic transformation and jobs creation, which is aligned to SDGs 8 and 9. SDG 8 talks about decent work and economic growth. SDG 9 talks about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Then we also have the human capital development. That is also aligned to SDGs 3 and 4. SDG 3 talks about good health and well-being, commitment to improving healthcare access and quality, with specific targets to reduce maternity and child mortality, and address the burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases. Then SDG 4 talks about quality education. That's commitment to ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education at all levels. Then we also have environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability is aligned to SDGs 6 and 13, the fight against environmental degradation, which is also a priority of government. SDG 6 talks about clean water and sanitation. SDG 13 talks about climate action, taking urgent action to combat climate change, including addressing the devastating effects of illegal mining on water bodies, forests, and promoting the use of clean energy. Then the last is poverty, inequality, and governance. Poverty, inequality, and governance is aligned to SDGs 1 and 16, ensuring development benefits everyone and is supported by strong institutions. So we are talking about building strong institutions, talking about having a commitment to effective, accountable, and transparent institutions. And then we talk about SDG 1, which talks about no poverty, making sure that everybody lives above the poverty line. I don't know how that can be achieved. Focus on implementing comprehensive social protection systems to provide safety nets for the poor and vulnerable. Now, this is not to say that to an extent, we also have some misalignments. It's not entirely the case that every instrument that you find in the 2026 budget is aligned to the... So, what are the misalignments? And one of the problems we have is that we can talk about fiscal space versus strategic investment. In other words, so much emphasis in achieving financial stability, and they look at the quantum of investment that is committed to kickstarting the 24-hour economy and making sure that the big push infrastructure plans are undertaken. Of course, if you talk about a big push infrastructure plan, it also includes continuation of some of the infrastructural projects which was started by the previous regime. I think we have Honorable here, Honorable, we talk about that. So So it's an issue of short-term urgency versus investment, strategic investment, long-term strategic investment. And what this means is that, one of the intentions of government, if you look at the budget statement, the intentions of government is to ease government borrowing on the domestic financial market so that the interest rate will come down, credit will be affordable by the private sector, and it's expected that the banking institutions and other depository institutions would respond accordingly and grant credit at low interest rates, which would encourage the private sector to borrow and invest and expand on businesses. But the problem is that we have a history in this country. We know that most of the banks that we have in this country are risk averse. They are risk averse, which means that it's not something that we can expect to attain within the short term. So that is a form of misalignment. And then we also have history of political cycle and plan discontinuity. Plan discontinuity, we know that every 4 years we go to the polls and we know what happens as to our history. During election year, we all know what happens. And that means that we have a situation where some projects are discontinued. And that also creates an issue. Then we have a few blind spots. And a few blind spots means that we talk about the innovative financing of Vision 2057. What is the blind spot there? We talk about limited financial horizon. We all know that our budgets are one-year financial statements. One-year financial statements don't really fit into having what we call a long-term financial model, which would help propel the implementation of medium-term development strategy towards the attainment of our long-term vision of becoming an upper middle-income country. I think I'll stop here. My time is up, so I'll stop here. Then, if the questions come, we'll talk more about it.
I think we can give Prof a bigger round of applause for his presentation. So, Acting Provost, Prof, colleagues up on the speaking deck, colleague students, because I'm still a student myself. Good morning to you all. Thanks for the opportunity to make a few remarks before we get into the conversation. Let me start by caveating, because I see some of the news networks here I'm not doing a review of the budget. I am doing a little set of remarks on a particular topic: fiscal discipline, parliamentary oversight, and budget credibility. And I suspect that I've been given this combination of themes to deal with for a particular purpose. You see, the budget is the president's document. It only happens to be delivered by the minister responsible for finance. Indeed, the president can designate any of his ministers or even the vice president to go to parliament and read his budget. The budget is also a legal instrument. If you look in the Constitution, Article 179 requires that every year, 1 month before the year ends, the president causes to be tabled before parliament his economic policy and budget. Now, the budget is not in a vacuum. If you look at Article 36(5) of the Constitution, when you campaign, when you go around making all your promises and you win, the Constitution requires that your promises and your ideas are converted into a 4-year governance program. It's called the Coordinated Program for Economic and Social Policies. So it is that 4-year program out of which each year you pick one and then you construct a budget. And so your budget is supposed to be speaking to a certain medium-term program. And as Prof discussed earlier, even though this government's medium-term program is not ready, the broad vision of the country is a good measure. And that's why he was comparing the economic policy and budget to that.
Now, when the budget is then brought to Parliament, our job is to scrutinize and to approve, because Parliament is the arm of government that has what we call the power of the purse. So Parliament is the one that will give the government permission to raise money, and then will also give approval to spend the money. And in between the two, we exercise what we call oversight, to check and be sure that government is doing what it has committed to the people of Ghana that it will do. And it is within this context that I'm making my remarks. Now, fiscal discipline, as I'm sure you have heard, has become a very popular term now. Theoretically, what it means is living within your means. You would have heard Professor Nsedu talk about something as the primary balance. In fact, properly speaking, the primary balance on commitment basis is expected to be in surplus, and that is what suggests that you are living within your means. But from my experience, having worked as a member of Parliament, Deputy Minister of State, now an opposition MP, fiscal discipline goes beyond the question of living within your means. Fiscal discipline, in my experience, is about first designing a fit-for-purpose fiscal program. If you design the program and it's not fit for purpose, even within that program, you are showing an intention to be indisciplined. Second is to stick to that program. And third is to ensure that by the time that program is executed, with all the conditions that may come as exogenous shocks even, that program lives up to the concept of living within your means. And so I'll speak to that as we go on. Parliamentary oversight, theoretically, is also about how Parliament scrutinizes the budget and oversees performance. But in practice, it should go way beyond that. How Parliament tightens the bolts and nuts and pushes government to deliver on the social contract is, for me, the refined definition of parliamentary oversight. And then credibility. So what does credibility mean? You know, Ghana is one of the countries in which we celebrate the budget reading more than the implementation of the budget. I remember in our days, sometimes when we read the budget, you go to Abusoka, you see people jubilating. Read. And some promises have been made. But what is more important is the implementation of that. So, credibility is not just about announcements that have been made, but it's about whether or not the public can rely that the outcomes, the execution, will reflect what has been programmed. And so what you're asking me to do is to now put these three things together: fiscal discipline, parliamentary oversight, and credibility. What my reflection is that first of all, the fiscal details matter. So are the ideas in the fiscal program fit for purpose? That's the first indication that you are going to actually achieve fiscal discipline. For those of you who recall, when the current administration was campaigning and when the current finance minister was being vetted, they explained how they expect to run the fiscal program so that they can fulfill all the commitments that they have made, including the reflections that Professor Nsedu has done. And what they said was that the old government was running an inefficient fiscal program. So they were going to change it. What were they going to do? They were going to remove some taxes from the revenue side and tighten compliance. And the effect is that they will raise more revenue so that they will be able to deliver on the expectations. In fact, the specifics that the government gave were that after they removed the taxes, they were going to move tax to GDP ratio. And for those of you who are economic students here, tax to GDP ratio is a measure of how much of the productivity in the country you are mopping up into the treasury so that you can use it to fund activities. We've been around 13%. They said they were going to remove the taxes and it will move tax to GDP ratio from 13% to 18% without introducing new taxes. And by so doing, mobilizing 18% of GDP, they'll get more resources and they can fulfill all the promises that, or at least a good chunk, no government ends up fulfilling all, or a good chunk of the promises. And it sounds like a good fiscal program, true or false? And so the majority of Ghanaians loved the idea. And true to their word, when they came to power, they removed some of those taxes. They advertised quite a number of them. I think about 6 of them that they were removing. In actual fact, only about 3 of them were actual taxes that people were paying. There were about 3 others, emissions levy and a few other levies, where the collection was 0 because they were not being implemented. So there was a lot of fanfare. Like what happened in 2017 when we removed about 12 or so taxes, and there was a lot of jubilation. So taxes removed. And you recall that at the time we were mentioning that by the time they'll be done, they'll have a fiscal hole, and they'll struggle to make the revenues to fulfill the promises. Today, finding out in the results they have brought that revenue is underperforming currently around 19 billion Ghana cedis. In fact, if you look at the tables, it will tell you 8 billion Ghana cedis. But remember that this government swept 11 billion Ghana cedis balance brought forward. So if you take that out of what they are reporting, the revenue gap is about 19 billion Ghana cedis. They are sticking to the commitment of the fiscal anchor that they don't want to go beyond their borrowing program. Therefore, the resource envelope is limited, and that is commendable. The resource envelope is limited. So as a result, on the expenditure side, expenditure is now also undercut by about 29 or 28 billion. Now, the expenditure is not just numbers. It is the fuel that will fulfill the aspirations and the dreams and the social control. So the question of credibility going forward is hinged on how the previous budget, for example, has performed in terms of the actual revenue and expenditure, and also hinged, therefore, on what the fiscal program looks like going forward. Going forward, they have introduced VAT reforms and have tried to simplify the VAT calculation. In fact, yesterday we had a meeting at Finance and Economic Committee where they brought the paperwork on that one. And effectively, they are reducing the effective rate. The same argument they have made is that by reducing the rate, they expect that they will raise more because it will be simpler and there will be compliance. Again, we have worries about whether that will translate into the numbers. But that is the first challenge when it comes to credibility. The second is the methods being used for macro stability. So today the cedi has appreciated by about 30%. Inflation is down to single digit. Interest rates, if you look at the Monetary Policy Committee rate, there's easing there. If you plot it against the Ghana reference rate, you see a little bit of easing. But now when you come to the most important 2 indicators at the bottom, the average interest rate at the bank and the stock of credit to the private sector, it is not responding accordingly. But more importantly are the methods and the question of how sustainable those methods are. And so you will find that on the currency side, the structural challenges for which our supply of Forex is not commensurate to demand, which causes a lot of the depreciation. Those structural issues have not been tackled. And today, what we're having is a lot of market intermediation. Simply put, what that means is pumping of dollars to augment what the market is not able to provide. Now, for a country that now has balance of trade surplus, we should be edging towards balance of payment surplus, so that we will naturally on the market be able to have Forex coming in. But because of a lot of structural issues with the repatriation of export earnings, it's not happening. And as a result, the government is pumping in to be able to contain the situation. January till October, our import bill is now $14 billion. Same time last year was about $12 billion. So our import bill is going up. By our estimation, the intermediation so far is about $8 billion. So if you take out the intermediation, you would get a sense of the kind of pressure. And so you ask yourself, how sustainable is it? Today, we're able to do that because gold prices are about $4,000 an ounce on the global market because of all the global uncertainty. They used to be about $1,700 an ounce when we started the gold purchase program, which has been the market changer in 2021. And our new friends, when they came to power, have turned the PMMC that was doing that into the gold board and have also expropriated anybody else from export. So they get a bit more from that. So the methods also being used for macro stability, you want to have a look at it and ask yourself how sustainable they are. Number 3, and this is where I'll end, the real sector. And that is where they want to focus on now. Growth, jobs, and transformation. So you ask yourself, what are the growth pools? What is the government strategy for growth, jobs, and transformation? 24-hour economy. It was a very popular concept during 1 job, 3 people, 3 shifts. The government has announced or launched the program. We in Parliament have been asking them to bring the program document to Parliament so that oversight can start. To date, it hasn't come to Parliament. It's not just that. There are about 11 programs that government has launched. Agric for Accelerated Development, Feed Ghana, Kokon Kitinkiti, Big Push, and a few other programs. We've been asking that all of those programs should be brought to Parliament so that we can start the oversight. Not one has been brought to Parliament so far. So oversight is also challenged. But you had the benefit of the program document. And why it's important is that when they are made available, you, faculty here, lecturers, professors, you can now interrogate and get a sense of whether or not these programs deliver the growth that is being promised, the jobs that is being promised, and the transformation that is being promised. Or whether you can even give feedback. But in the absence of the actual program, all of us struggle. We don't have it, you don't have it. It's only the government that will tell us that this year they will create 800,000 jobs from programs that we haven't seen. And so, again, let me take advantage of this platform to urge on the government, bring the program documents to Parliament so that all of us can have an opportunity to interrogate and give feedback. Very last point, and then I'll wrap up. Assuming these programs are brought, and we are all now looking at them, you are now looking at how the fiscal allocations can then be made to fund and execute them, and how what they call institutional quality, the institutions responsible for implementing them, will also implement them. But when that is done, there's something else we need to focus attention on, which is my final point, the impact metrics. How do we have the data to ascertain the impact on inequality, poverty reduction, jobs, all of those other issues that we raise when it comes to determining the impact of these programs? And so to conclude, Chairman, Parliament needs to assert itself a bit more to demand deep data so that we can do a lot of good assessment and analysis. Else, then we're only left to what has been announced, and then we jubilate. Down the line, we find out that some of the things have not happened. Fiscal data also needs to be automated and published regularly so that even you sitting here, you can look at the numbers for yourself. For many people, but for the fact that I'm telling you that revenue is underperformed by 19 billion, you didn't know. And government will be saying fiscal discipline, fiscal discipline. For the fact that, or if I wasn't telling you that the Comptroller and Accountant General's national accounts show a sweep over balance brought forward of 11 billion from last year, you will believe the story that the leaving government did not leave any buffers for the new government. But this is why it's important that fiscal data is published regularly by various institutions so that all of you can do your analysis. The macro methods also need to be disclosed with candor. For example, on the currency, in the beginning of the year, we heard so many stories. You ask, are you doing intermediation? Governor says no. Are you doing intermediation? President says no, it's good leadership. It takes the IMF to come in and say, no, you are doing intermediation, stop it, and bring a framework. And then when they stop, the depreciation starts. When they put in the framework and now they are announcing, then now there's an appreciation. So there needs to be candor and a front loading when it comes to some of the macro methods that are being used, so that all of you, the academics, you can also make your assessments. I've mentioned the program documents already. Parliament also needs to do what we call performance hearings. So if we give you 200 million cedis for planting for food and jobs, that you are going to do an agric intervention program, there will be food stock and prices will come down. And at the end of the day, you spend our $200 million and food prices haven't come down. I think that we should be having some performance hearings, not just about public accounts committee to see whether you spent the money in accordance with accounting and legal practices, but about outcomes, for which reasons we made those funds available. In particular, reports on the quality of life indicators need to be focused on so that we can measure the kind of impact that we are making. And we in Parliament also need to reorient ourselves. We need to reform. Usually when the budget is brought, if you're on government side, you say everything is good. If you're on opposition side, you say everything is bad. We are trying to move away from that, and we encourage ourselves that we should look at these things more from a technical point of view, frank nationalistic point of view, and not necessarily a partisan point of view. And that way, Parliament can ensure that the interaction that we have with the executive will birth credibility going forward. I thank you for the opportunity to make these remarks.
When the bar has been set so high, it puts you in a very difficult situation. You have a professor speaking and an astute politician, and you really wonder where this leaves you with. All right, it's really elated to be back home. Thank Anta for this invitation. He chased me everywhere. He chased me from Brussels to Rome to London and in Accra. So I had to abandon a very important exercise to be here this morning, but I don't regret it. When I heard of data science and economics department, it was from an academic point of view, it was quite elating to hear, because it shows how contemporary the University of Cape Coast is, and no wonder we've been seeing rise in the Times higher rankings. And it's my hope that that continues to happen. And just as a way of an icebreaker, just with the students, not my professors. How many of you have heard of Hans Rosling? He's a statistician. Data person, big on data. Hans Rosling? Anyone? I have a prize for you if you've heard of him. Okay, go ahead. Feel free. You can cheat. ChatGTP, anything. Just get me the name. That's what is most important. Okay, well, I'm just trying to link him to what we're doing today, which has to do with data. Now, Hans talked about what he calls the World PIN code. And by the World PIN code, he says it's, as of now, 1114. And what that means is that the world's population PIN code, it means that the world's population as we stand now is, you have in the America 1 billion people, in Europe 1 billion, in Africa 1 billion, and 4 billion in Asia. Then he postulated that if we were to be in 2100 by years, the world's PIN code would be 1145. So what this invariably translates into is that the world's PIN code would have Africa having 4 billion and Asia having 5. So what this tells us is that there's a great future when it comes to potential of youth demographic and data. And as to how we do with that, it's up to us. So I'm just trying to link that to what we're doing today and tells you the essence and the real essence of what data it's meant to be. Well, the focus of this, or today, I've been asked to, as far as the topics are concerned, to look at issues of macro stability and implementation strategy for 2026 budget. The highlights I've been asked to look at is coordination, fiscal monetary alignment, and growth strategy. And Prof, expanded a lot of time with our national strategy when it comes to Vision 2057. We have that, but how does that align with our national budgets over the years, not just the 2026 budget? How is that translating into growth and impact? How are we implementing it in the various agencies? So for once, I was listening to Prof. I thought, okay, well, are you reading our manifesto? Or are you reading the party's manifesto? Because we have, 24-hour economy. We have all the flagship projects being espoused. Big push, which is a big envelope item on the budget, and how that is going to be translated into growth. But to start all of this, it is important for us to highlight upon a few issues that we look at, or we are more focused on as a government. Permit me to go over this with you and to have a real macro perspective of what these issues are. When we talk about the Women's Development Bank, which I'm working on aggressively. So I would like to have a bias here to take this opportunity for us to have linkages as far as implementation is concerned. Right, because we're talking about the unbanked, and the economists in the room would appreciate and understand that. And when we talk about the unbanked, as he who works with a commercial bank would know, we have a big saturation when it comes to the banking space. But if we create another glazing, brick and mortar, and say, look, this is a women's development bank, what is going to happen to the gap that we are seeking to bridge? So in terms of implementation policy, what the government of the day is saying is that we're going to have what? A target market. And that target market is the bottom of the pyramid. And who are the bottom of the pyramid? Those women who don't have access to collateral. Those women who don't have access to finance. And those who could be brought onto the financial pyramid. And how do you get that implemented within a policy space? It is by targeting the right people. So with terms of implementation, as you would see, the first budget had allocations to it. The second budget of 26 has an allocation to it. So formulative issues have been ongoing. Now you look at another big flagship item, big push. I mean, it may have its critics, it may have no policy, it's devoid of criticism, if you look at it from a perspective. But this is looking at connecting the country from every nook and cranny, and which has ties to do with other flagship policy of Feed Ghana, 24-hour economy, etc., etc. Right? Because if you don't have good infrastructure and accessible roads, how do you achieve most of these? That's why the big push has become a big item and a big envelope item on the national budget. And as the president rightly put it as part of his research agenda, he did mention that the country is going to look like a construction site. And with a few of the sword cutting ceremonies that have gone around, we're beginning to see most of what is going to happen. And when we talk about big push and even link it to other economies or developed economies where they have bridging the south and the north, the northern powerhouse grid, etc., etc., you'd see that these are conscious efforts that governments of the day are making to actually have some achievements in terms of what? Real impact. In terms of macroeconomic stability, it is a big thing. It's the anchor. The micro would always be there. But the macro is the mortar that holds the micro together. So if we don't get that right as a foundational form of it, how do we feed in the macro? Or how does the macro then informs the macro to really achieve what we're seeking to? Which is why that's very important in all of what we're doing and the progress we are making as a government. You would see, again, in terms of implementation policy, look, we, as a government, now I'm very conscious of using we because I moved from academia to this role. And I was struggling calling myself a policy person or a politician. And I kept getting pinches to say, you are a politician. I finally accepted I am one. So I'd like to use the word we. So you look at it from a perspective, let's say, i.e., in terms of, again, implementation of all these policies. We as a government inherited a very overheated economy. And we say overheated economy, on the financial dashboard, everything was negative or near negative. Right? We had not cooled off to even turn a corner. So we needed to cool off. And that's what the first budget did. Right? To bring stability to the market, to bring back investor confidence, right? Move inflation from about 50% plus all the way down to a single digit as we speak now. And there have been very prudent measures in terms of these establishment of these policies. The Gold Board, as my senior colleague, the Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah mentioned, has seen a transformational change in what it tends to implement in anchoring or delivering or serving as the conveyor belt to meeting some macroeconomic stability. Right. It went to Parliament as a new bill. It got ratified and accepted as a legal binding national document or by an act. It has a functional board. And when this happens, the investor community sees a certain level of confidence in it. So regardless of the price of gold on the international market, but they see a certain level of harmonization that could translate into stability across the entire value chain of gold purchase and processing. So yes, the market could be good. We can call that a windfall. But if you don't have the domestic implementation policy that can harness and serve as the conveyor belt that would deliver that, then we would still be lacking in having the full benefit of any international windfall that may be on the market. And that's exactly what Gold Board is doing as far as trying to deliver this stability and meet this gap. So it enhances that. And you see the projections of gold trading on the international market, where it's headed for, where it's going to be. And people know that, okay, well, we're dealing with a country that has an established board with legislation. It has a board. It has a functional vehicle that can help deliver this. In that light, we would go for it. Right. So then this allows for that. So in implemented that side of things, which has linkages with what the central bank is doing in terms of reserves. And if you look today, we have actually met the ECOWAS criteria of keeping our reserves much more lower, because ECOWAS is looking at, I think, Kanta, if you correct me, 4 months of import cover. We are at 4+ months of import cover as we speak today. And you look at central bank reserves, etc., etc. Because we inherited the economy at a time where the central bank was even running losses or had posted a loss. And for a functionality, as the economists would say, or any functionality of a central bank that uses moral suasion, no one can deceive you that a central bank with a negative book does not have an impact. It does, within the framework of what it's doing. So there are multiple issues in terms of the implementation programs of the country. Agriculture, massive. So Feed Ghana, I was with the Agric Minister at the World Food Prize in Ohio, and how he espoused the Feed Ghana project, and how all of that turned to translate. So these are, apart from the numbers that we see on the books, these are the policies. Again, we're engaged with the World Bank in Palermo in Italy to talk about job creation and growth. You look at NEIP, what it's doing in terms of job creation. The digital space, we're talking data, has become a big issue. Right. So 1 million coders, massive. You look at the gold mine of today, when we talk about that in terms of data, which you would relate, is BPOs. So imagine the digital coders program translating or turning us into an international BPO hub. The jobs will be spanning out as far as job creation is concerned. Right. We're happy to play with the numbers, but we're talking macro stability. So it's my duty to actually create linkages as to what the government of the day is doing in terms of its policies. Apprenticeship program has been launched and is ongoing now. Right? You have thousands, teams of thousands of the youth, entrepreneurs, incubator hubs. Right? My dream is that we should have linkages to our universities in creating these incubator hubs to see how we could span them up. I know the University of Ghana, the University of Professional Studies are doing quite some work around that. And I'm hoping and seeking to see what the School of Business, you have one here as well. So fantastic. Right. So in terms of macro stability, we have a manifesto document, which is our blueprint. The budget, as my senior indicated, is meant to be the blueprint or the president's blueprint that would help us implement what we promised Ghanaians and what we voted for. We're not in an election year. We're not campaigning to win, but we have a mandate to deliver on the very manifesto, which we named the People's Manifesto, to the good people of Ghana. And we're calling upon all and sundry, regardless of political affiliation, that this is a bipartisan document. Since January 7th, it did not become an NDC manifesto. It has become a bipartisan document, right, for a government of the day that is headed to actually translating impact into growth. So no blame games, come together, let's build the Ghana we want to achieve. Thank you very much.
I believe it's still morning, right? Good morning. Thank you, my professors. Thank you, Kanta, for the opportunity. I suppose it's a bad arrangement. I mean, you don't put a punk wine in there. These guys, and then ask me to speak after, but yeah, we'll try what we can. Grateful for the opportunity to be here. I give us some slides to be shown on the screen if it's ready. you could project it. I've been asked to speak, maybe share some thoughts on a moment, please. Okay. All right, sure, it's on the screen. Yeah, I've been asked to share some thoughts on the financial sector support for fiscal consolidation, investment, and private sector growth. Listening to all of the conversation, reading through the budget, and all of the beautiful things we want to hear. Yes, it's true. Ghana is a developing economy. We, by all means, need to grow. And to deliver that growth, we need to invest. And some of you are economic students, so you know the national income accounting equation. The G plus the C plus the I would always, X minus M would always equal Y, right? And either G is growing, I is growing, C is growing, or all are growing together to deliver the growth. And there is the conversation around the multiply effect. You know all of these, right? And so government is within their means to spend. Individuals and private entities are within their means to spend. And they also create opportunities in the economy to drive this growth. So all of that good. But I go back to what my CFO, Chief Finance Officer, tells me anytime I go to him with something. He will look at all the beautiful ideas you have, listening to them, and tell you, Courage, these things are nice. But at the end of the day, what is the impact in terms of revenue? Because we still have to pay the bills. So I make this opening point to say that, yes, we need sustainable growth. Yes, we need the hospitals. Yes, we need the infrastructure. We need the road. And I drove on some terrible road coming here yesterday. We need the schools. We need a number of things. And for most of you, if all of you sitting here, you would one day be looking for a job. You need those investments to unlock jobs for you, so you do not join. Maybe these days we don't hear of the Unemployed Graduate Association a lot, but so you do not join that kind of group. So we need investment, no doubt about that. And government alone cannot do it. We must acknowledge that also. So private sector have to play their role in that whole process. And we know that domestic or indigenous private sector can only do much, but the resource pool is limited. So we need to tap into, in fact, today, an EY research shows that there is about 25 trillion, $25 trillion of investable funds in private hands looking for opportunities globally. But for the Trump tariff and then the global geopolitical dynamics and how it's playing on risk sentiment and all that, we should see by now maybe some policy normalization in advanced economies to a greater extent, and full-fledged risk-taking appetite in emerging markets, including places like Ghana and elsewhere, if we are credit-worthy. So there is capital if we do our things right. But these private capital, and talking from a perspective of a banker, these private capital needs what? Stability. So look at what happened in our economy, and I'll go into those details. So we've seen NPLs today 20% plus. We've seen, call it the debt restructuring, the fiscal instability, and all the issues related, how it triggered huge impairment on the books of banks. And we've had to write off. In 2023, I think 2022, almost all banks took heavy losses. And capitals were impaired. In fact, some banks are still struggling to repair their capital out of that size. So you want to lend to a sector, to an area, to an activity where you are certain of getting your money back, talking from a finance perspective. And so that is where I go back to my finance director, that yes, the ideas may be beautiful, but do we have the resources? That is why we must do fiscal consolidation. And like Honorable Oponkroma explained, it's not merely cutting expenditure or growing revenue, but it's about the credibility of that process. Even starting from the projection of revenue growth, the assumptions underlying it, are they credible enough? And can anyone bank on those plans, policies, ideas to drive the growth we want and be assured of getting our money back? So when Prof. Nsedu mentioned that banks are risk averse, yes, it's true, but for good reason. My deposits are the longest tenor deposit are maybe 2 years, 3 years. And I have to lend to an activity where I know in the Ghanaian economy, it's a 4-year cycle. And typically the first 2 years, like we are seeing, is a correction period. We've seen it in 2001, we've seen it in 2009, we've seen it in 2017, and we are seeing it today. The excesses of the election years tend to be corrected in the first and second years, mostly, of the new administration. And the question becomes, if you're in the third year, election is, and I'm sure Prof. Khalid would want to hold on to power into the next election as well. If election is staring you in the face and you could see defeat right on the wall, will fiscal consolidation still hold? And that is why the institutional structures that can deliver this needs to be in place. And these are the things we as financial institutions will look out for. These are the things we look out for to lend to whatever activity. So today, I mean, just to drive the point home, today you could move the slide to, I think, the next one. We have financial sector asset talk, insurance talk, pensions talk, fund management side, and the banking sector, around 500 billion, thereabout, about 45% of GDP. And if you go into where they are deployed, as we speak, September 2025 financial numbers, the earning asset base of banks, about 43, almost 44% of those assets are in investments. And these are largely government of Ghana investments, really. The other 28% is in cash and cash equivalent. So we buying BOG bills, we holding some cash, doing some interbank transactions here and there, and about 19.1 of that is in loans. And so it tells you the story of what the issue is. It is not a case of banks don't want to lend. It is not a case of banks are, in fact, our business is to take a risk. But you take calculated risk, ones that you know you can retrieve your money. Bank of Ghana, as we speak, have a new directive that requires that banks from 2026 have a non-performing loans ratio of 10%. If I go gun blazing and to say government of Ghana's 24-hour economy program, and like we've seen with 1D1F, like we've seen with the many others, that it dies with the government, I go gun blazing and those projects are not grounded and the program is over, how do I retrieve my money back? Those are NPLs I have to write against my capital. And if I can't do that, I'm losing my license, which is the reason some banks lost their licenses anyway. Today, we told about 68 billion of arrears is carried from last year, portions validated, about 47 billion or so. There is a plan to clear them over a 4-year. If I funded a contractor who raised an IPC and is locked in this kind of situation, it means for the next 4 years, I'm not able to retrieve my capital. After 3 months of non-service, I have to impair the assets, call it NPLs, and begin to provision for them. That is hitting my capital. It affects how much more I can lend to even other sectors. So because of these and more, we are very careful where to go, just so you do not take some of these hits. You look at a more patient market, the Ghana fixed income market, which was established, I think, 10 years ago. It celebrated its decade anniversary, I think, sometime last week. You look at that market, and it was meant to attract private entities in there, as well as government. Government has been issuing bonds all this while. But over that 10-year history, in fact, we're just looking at the stock now. As at end of September, Government of Ghana's total holdings on the GIFM is about 336 billion. Guess what the private sector has been able to raise within the 10-year period? Just about 24 billion. And that 24 billion was made to look better because there is Cocoa Board in there, which is a quasi-fiscal institution. There is, I think, what's the name? Get Fund Levy, what's the name? Dachi Bond in there. And there is the ESLA bond also in there. All of these are quasi-state institutions that issue bonds on the market. So if you discount all of these, you realize that the private sector participation, even in that segment of the market, is very low. And why will they think of it? When you have a short cycle, you are hit with interest rates around 25, 30%. A bond issuance process takes minimum 3 months. If you are very efficient and all your papers are okay, it takes minimum 3 months. Why will you go through a process of 3 months or more, sometimes a year, only to issue, say, 100 million or 50 million at 25%? Very similar to lending rate on the market. And all of the disclosures that come with it, that puts you out there. Why will you want to go through that process? And it's not like you are getting a 10-year tenor, 15-year tenor that you say it's worth the hassle. The maximum you could get, I mean, over this 10-year period, the highest tenor anyone has issued as a private entity was 10 years. Largely as 2 years, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year maximum thereabout. So the structural issues are quite enormous, and the reason financial sector players do not play a lot in the sectors we want to see growth, that is the SME sector, the MSE sectors, the base of pyramid people that he talked about. If you are venturing into those sectors with your own capital, not concessional, but with your own capital, they don't have collaterals to even start with. Location is a problem. And the informality, heavy informality of the sector. So you are guided as to, not that you don't know there is value, but how do you retrieve your money? And if it is not clear, you don't even go there at all. I am summing up, I know. The point I want to make, which is on the last slide, if you could skip to that last slide, which is my concluding thought. So going into this budget, what I was asking and I asked myself, I think about 10 questions, what I'm looking for from the budget. I listed 5 of them here to share with you and share my thoughts on what I found from there. Question 1, what concrete safeguards, be it fiscal, escape clauses, enforcement mechanisms, that will be in place to ensure that the 1.5% surplus fiscal anchor survive beyond the current IMF program? It is not for lack of forecast. We've always had forecast in our budget, and medium term at that. They look beautiful all the time. When the fiscal responsibility law was passed, it didn't put a figure to it, but it says at least a positive primary surplus or primary balance for the period. For whatever the reasons were, they were sidestepped along the way. Now we have 1.5. Under IMF program, we look like this year we might meet it. It looks like from the test and the conversations around the budget, it may also be met maybe 2025, maybe. But in 2027, 2028, when the election is approaching, what are the safeguards in there? Beyond the words and beyond the beautiful speeches and all that, our history is a guide to tell us that until there is a doing, we can't be too confident. Number 2, how much of the envisaged consolidation is genuinely structural? Expenditure rationalization, arrears cleanup, versus the one-off cyclical factors that could unwind if growth or commodity prices disappoint. And that is the important point, and I again borrow Honorable Oponkruma's point earlier. What we have seen as consolidation is largely revenue underperforming and rationalizing expenditure to match, so we keep a target. Point blank. Have we done anything truly structural in terms of increasing the revenue basket? Yes, revenue has grown, but to what extent? Is it extraordinary beyond the pace we've seen in normal times? And what specific interventions, compliance-wise, is delivering revenue growth to the point where we could say that we have transformed the fiscal side or revenue side to be able to deliver the consolidation we're looking for in extraordinary times if there are shocks? I am not sure there is a lot of comfort in the budget around the institutionalization of those structures. How will the fiscal policy and debt management strategy for coordinated and Bank of Ghana's mobilization path to avoid a premature loosening, how could that ignite inflation and exchange rate pressures going forward? I think Bank of Ghana has been on a path, and we commend them this year for the kind of policy stance they've taken. Inflation is at 8%. Probably at the next meeting in a few days, they will look at bringing the policy rate down. I think it's at 21.5% as we speak. That commitment to tightening, and you could see base money growth largely curtailed, broad money supply growth largely curtailed. We're talking 35% broad money growth last year. It's just about 16 or so, 16.5% as of September. In fact, I guessed this year. All of these are painful measures to try to, if you like, sterilize the economy that deliver the kind of inflation we're looking for. But going forward, beyond program, are there institutional anchors? Are there anything? Of course, I know there's the Fiscal Responsibility Act. There is also the financial PFMA, all in place and have stringent provisions in there. But these things have been on our statutes. So from a pure financial sector perspective, we are not excited about numbers necessarily. The joy will be in the doing of the numbers or the things we said we would do. And that is what will give us comfort to say, let's target SME, let's target MSE, let's target this sector, let's target that sector to deliver the growth that will create the jobs for you. Agriculture is a very wonderful case, but does the industry even have, if you like, the skill set to properly price agriculture? The infrastructure required to deliver value in agriculture, do we have it in place? And that is why if Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, if the Development Bank Ghana, and then all the other financial arrangements being put in place to build the base infrastructure for 24-hour plus, and particularly the Grow 24 component, are harnessed and deployed properly, it will create the environment for commercial banks to be comfortable to go in there. Let me conclude on this, that at the end of the day, it is your deposits, it is your investments, it is your income security in retirement, and it is your risk cover in insurance that are being deployed towards these segments of the market. If they go bad, the banks may take the first hit, but if they can't, you will take the hit. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm very excited to be part of the panelists, but I'm not so sure I'm equally excited to be the last speaker. After presentation from seasoned professor like Honorable Opon Nkrumah, aspiring politician, Prof. Khalid, or already established politician, a seasoned speaker like Courage, and my very Professor Nsiedu. I have been given a task to present on data-driven insights on poverty, inequality, and job creation. Ghana's 2026 budget. I have a slide, if it can be projected. But before I continue my presentation, you have heard a lot from the four speakers. Just take a moment and imagine a Ghana with zero poverty, equitable access to opportunities for all, a country with a labor market that absorbs and rewards the youth. Can you envisage that Ghana? Well, that is the essence of the budget every year, for the country to repurpose and reprioritize. But oftentimes, when these budgets are read, the focus is mainly on macroeconomic indicators. You hear about indicators such as overall GDP, issues on price development, inflation, issues on primary balance, etc. And all these indicators sometimes usurp microeconomic indicators such as household welfare, including poverty and inequality. So there is that need to contextualize issues relating to inequality and poverty, as well as the broader goal of job creation. So I'm looking at the data-driven insight. And on the inequality trajectory globally, between country inequalities is closing up, is narrowing significantly. And this is because of convergence, especially among the developed countries. But within the context of developing countries, within level inequality is on the rise, mainly because country level peculiarities. Unique factors at the country level, labor market issues are driving inequality. So we can see in Ghana, where the data we have over time, 25-year data from 1992 to 2017, showing that inequality is on the rise. And these inequalities are measured on two fronts using Gini and Tail Index, which are widely used measures of measuring disparities, structural inequalities. Next slide. And what could be driving these inequalities? Even within the country, within country, inequality is on the rise. You can see about 75 to 89% of the inequality evolution can be approached within group dynamics. This means that there are more fundamental issues that are driving inequality compared to regional differences or group dynamics. What is the implication of this rise in inequality? The rise in inequality creates structural deficits that does not allow for impactful poverty reduction. And we can see that in the next slides. These are data-driven insights providing context in terms of evolution of inequality and poverty. Over time, our poverty measured by the monetary indices is on a downward spiral. But what is observable is that the momentum has been so strong in the 90s up to about 2013. But 2013 moving to 2017, we can see the momentum softening and overall poverty decreasing by 0.8 percentage point compared to the 1990 reductions of about even 12.7 percentage declines. Particularly, the extreme poverty is also on that downward spiral, showing that the social protection programs over time, i.e. the capitation grant, we can talk about the National Health Insurance Scheme, the livelihood empowerment against the poor, they have been effective in targeting the poor. However, post-2013, the momentum has also slowed down with only a 0.2 percentage decrease. We can see that issues with inequality are having a toll on that kind of large-scale reduction in poverty. So moving to the next slide, which has to do with how poverty reduction responds to the kind of economic growth we are having. The macroeconomic indicators in terms of growth are very important, but how does poverty reduction respond to the kind of economic growth we are having? We'll see that from post-2000 to 2017, we have about 0.17 reduction in poverty levels, but moving forward from 2013 to 2017, these also decreased to about 0.7 percentage point. The issue over there is that inequality is offsetting impactful or larger poverty reduction. Not only this, not only that the inequality is slowing the effect of growth
on poverty reduction, what is also observable is the distortions. Next slide. Distortions in allocations of basic living conditions. And we can see from the next slide, where even though monetary poverty is on a downward spiral, what we are having with multidimensional poverty is very alarming. We can see from 2017 that we have incidents of multidimensional poverty being multidimensionally poor in areas such as health, education, and living condition, about 45.6%. Then we are having about 13.28 million population in this category. In 2022, where we have economic challenges, multidimensional poverty increased to 48.1%. And these represent about 15.17 million of the population. Moving to 2023, it is a little to 45.2%, but using the projected population, this constitutes about 48.58 million of the population. So even though monetary poverty is on a downward spiral with a slowdown in momentum, however, multidimensional rates are alarming. And this is very important to contextualize issues regarding inequality. And it is very important in the sense that inequality estimates over time in Ghana, there has been paucity of data. We have available data up to 2017 of national statistics data on inequality. We can start thinking about nuanced data sources such as public sector administrative data that can come out with inequalities in public sector earnings. We can also leverage on the tax data from VAT to also have a form of a real-time analysis of inequality levels. This is very important because the major constraint to poverty reduction has to do with the inequality that affects the kind of policies that we have. Moving on to jobs, on my next slide, it is important for us to know the kind of growth that is driving the recovery and the transformation we want to see. You can see before the pandemic and after the pandemic, the country is recovering with the same structure. A service sector driving this growth. And it has to be noted that a growth in the service sector also risks widening inequality, because the service sector is dominated with activities in retail, transport, etc. And these are low-scale activities, and they also deepen inequality. Moving forward to the kind of employment structure we are having, which is very important for creating of sustainable jobs that can transform the economy. We can see from the chart from a high-frequency data from Ghana Statistical Service that services is leading growth by the green chart over there, compared to that of industry that is bottom, the orange line, about 16 to 20%. This means that we have to leapfrog industry to above agriculture to have a kind of growth that can lead to sustainable job creation. And that is jobs in the industry, jobs driven in the manufacturing sector. So when you take a look at the budget has a lot of flagship projects that are aiming to cushion the poor, at the same time trying to move towards this kind of sustainable job creation. So we can talk about the National Apprenticeship Program. We can talk about expanding digital jobs and create pathways into higher income jobs. The National Integrated Oil Palm Development, promising some jobs. So these are important initiatives to leapfrog our employment structure from low earning activities, low industry related activities, to activities that are high earning and high skill. And that is what will lead to sustainable job creation. And we have several social protection programs, also the overall expansion of social protection from 0.6 to 0.9%. And this is very important for the extremely poor. So I have just two concluding remarks on the poverty reduction, inequality, and job creation prospects of the budget. One, we should strengthen job creation, especially in industry sector, and modernize the agriculture sector in line with the medium-term national development policy framework. Another recommendation is that there should be that gradual adjustment of overall social protection expenditure to about 1.5% of GDP. Because usually, even though there is no benchmark, depending on how entrenched poverty is in a particular jurisdiction, when we consider the extremely poor population in tandem with the alarming rate of multidimensional poverty, it is very important that we make a gradual adjustment towards the average of most developing countries of about 1.5% of GDP. Then now we need to harness innovative data, that is high frequency microeconomic data, to track progress of all these flagship programs when it comes to poverty reduction. And this innovative data is very important because even the budget made allocation for rebasing of GDP and that of CPI to reflect the Ghanaian economy. It is very paramount that the impact of this estimate of the CPI and GDP, we are able to map it onto the inequality dynamics and also the poverty trajectory of the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I believe we've heard a lot, and our panelists have done a lot of justice to the key issues that they were given. We are going to have a conversation on these issues here, and then we will open it up for all of us to ask them questions that probably you picked up during their presentation. I think we have microphones all over, so I'll rather start with the first presenter and probably go by the same way of the presentation. So, Professor Isedu, the 2026 budget statement says 3 core priorities: consolidating macro stability, accelerating transformation and jobs, and strengthening security and social sectors under the theme resetting for growth and economic transformation. How explicitly do you see the priorities and flagship programs being mapped onto Ghana's current National Development Plan and the SDG targets? And where are the most worrying misalignments or blind spots? Especially, we need to know the blind spots that probably the government is not looking at that may not lead us into achieving the various national development targets.
Thank you. I think I made brief mention of some of these. I mentioned that, yes, the budget, the 2026 budget plan has instruments that align with the 3 pillars of the medium-term National Development Plan framework. We have for economic transformation and infrastructure, we have the infrastructure plan, the big push infrastructure plan. Some amount of, I've mentioned that about 110 billion Ghana cedis has been, that's the intention to, and then I also read from the budget that there's some amount of money that will be set aside for the establishment of the 24-hour economy secretariat. I may be wrong or right. Yeah, maybe, yeah. So, and I also mentioned, I mentioned the fact that one of the blind spots, I talked about the political cycle issue that we have, and the fact that our budgets, not only the 2026 budget statement, but all our budgets are 1 year, right? So we look at how much we are going to raise in terms of revenue to fund the intended development plans that we have. So how do we get or zoom that into much long-term financing model, right? I mentioned that. And then the political cycle itself, every 4 years we go to the polls, and we all know what is happening around us. We hardly continue with some of the, I'm not saying regimes don't continue with some, I'm saying that some of the projects they discontinue. And they all come up with their own ways of determining which projects are relevant to be continued with and what shouldn't be continued with. And that is a source of worry.
So in that case, do you think we should rather think, since we have a parliamentarian here, should we push Parliament to possibly enact a law or possibly work with the National Development Planning Commission to probably come up with a law that ties the hands of governments to national development strategies rather than discontinuing projects? Do you think that is the way to go?
I think as a country, if we are really serious about advanced economic advancement, that is the way to go. We ought to have a blueprint, something that, irrespective of who comes to power, I mean, we all have a blueprint we are all following, but how we go about it could vary, right? Depending on the justification, the points that we raise as justification for the strategy that we are adopting. I think that is it. So there are so many ways of killing a cat. So it depends on how you justify the strategy that.
Yeah, I think Honorable want to add something to that.
Well, so first let me wear my lawyer's hat. From the constitutional point of view and from the democratic point of view, I don't think it's a good idea to box ourselves into what people call a national development plan or strategy. Our constitution envisages that times change, things change. And so every 4 years, we have an opportunity to even change our mind as a country. Because if we don't, can you imagine going on a particular path that is not right and we are stuck with it ad infinitum. So the Constitution requires every 4 years we make a change. But if you read the directive principles of state policy, it spells out the broad scope of the things we should be aspiring to achieve. Some of those things, like you rightly said, Prof, are the things that are included in Vision 2057. But I agree with you that we can, in particular, when it comes to infrastructure projects, we can and we have a room to legislate that successive governments should complete those ones, maybe even before moving on to other ones. And so, for example, right now, in Parliament, I have tabled a private member's bill. It's a PFM amendment bill seeking to amend Section 21 of the Public Financial Management Act to the effect that if you are a ministry, department, or agency, or MMDC, the Minister of Finance should be barred from funding your work program if that program is not in the medium-term development program of Ghana. Because there are a lot of ministries, departments, agencies, MMDCs that are on a frolic of their own when it comes to spending money. They can justify the projects they are doing, but the context in which I'm speaking is that those projects are not necessarily in the national development strategy, the medium-term strategy. And I think that particularly for infrastructure projects, we can tidy it up so that we don't have all of these abandoned projects going on and on. But for example, take like industrialization. So the MPP had a view to do industrialization and to move the curve that you just showed us from services-led, agri following, and industry rather at the bottom, to move industry to the top. The program that we rolled out was the One District, One Factory program. And the results of that program, we provided those results. You can look at it in the Ghana Statistical Service data sets and see the transmission effect. The new government says they don't believe in that, so they've cancelled it. They should have that right to cancel it. And in its replacement, as the advertised people of Ghana, they've brought a program. So they should be allowed to cancel and bring their 24-hour economy program. Now what remains is for that to deliver, then the people of Ghana can compare. That, okay, under 1D1F, we had 100 and something factories, we had this number of people who were working, we saw this, we saw this, we saw this. Now under 24-hour economy, where is it? Did we see? The people of Ghana will now look at the two and make a determination. But for infrastructure projects, I agree that we should have a lock-in so that they are concluded.
Yeah. So, Prof. Khalid, do you want to? There's a microphone close.
To agree with everyone on the platform, you would realize that contextualization matter and the political climate is also an important tool. I mean, quite often than not, when we're talking about development plan or national development plan and their longevity and sustainability, we make reference to Singapore, Malaysia, etc., etc. But you look at the model or the political model within Singapore, it's entirely different to what we have, right, in terms of longevity of a state, of a government or a president. And the commitment, even you could have political parties, right, the same political party in power, different presidents, having varied differences as to which direction a particular policy would follow. So, well, maybe in terms of even infrastructure, once it's started, right, and it's approved by Parliament, it has a certificate of commencement, and it's believed that this would inure to the good people, regardless of government, we don't even need a national development plan enacted by law to get it to continue or to see it to implementation or completion. But that should happen. But let's always be careful in how we treat these things with country-specific, with demographic-specific, with kind of practices we have. Right, because a 4-year mandate, I mean, we're still arguing about increasing the mandate of a term. I don't know what Honorable Kojo Nkrumah thinks about that, whether that 1 year will make a difference. I don't know. But these are things that we should contextualize in its practical terms, cognizant of the prevailing circumstance within our local space politically and economically.
Okay. So, Honorable, let me come to you. You were raising issue of credibility. And I think during the presentation by Mr. Buti, he raised concerns about the fact that financial institutions in the country are a bit careful putting money in certain flagship programs because it looks like they seem to die with government. And partly we have this issue of political parties getting to the election, they slip, and then the targets they set, they end up not achieving it. What differently, what is a new thing the current parliament can do, given the fact that we have an overwhelming majority with a limited number of opposition. It doesn't slip, and we continue our current trajectory in fiscal policy.
So I think two things we need to do. One is to automate the publication of national data. I mentioned it in my presentation. One of the challenges that you have is that you often won't see the data until it is very late. It doesn't matter whether you are Professor something or Doctor something. If you are flying an aircraft or driving and you can't see the data on the dashboard until it's very late, chances are that you will crash. So it is very important that the fiscal data in particular is automated and published, perhaps even on a regular basis. We know the various sources of the data. Non-tax data, we know where it comes from. GRA has its data sets, all of these. It shouldn't be beyond us to find a way by which we can automate and regularly publish this data. That's the first step. Because it doesn't matter when you say 1.5% primary balance. If you can't see the arrears build up on a live basis. In fact, contrary to the claim that no arrears are being built, I can tell you on authority that between January and now, this new government has built arrears. And that if you were to use the same formula that they used in adjusting the primary balance that they inherited, and here, let me confess, I'm going to sound partisan. The primary balance that they adjusted so that they will tell a story to make us look so bad. If you use the same formula to carry up their arrears now that they have racked up between January and now, and you adjust what they are claiming now, you will find out that it's a lot worse than they are telling us it is. So the data needs to be automated and published regularly. It doesn't matter when you say you've set up a fiscal council. If the fiscal council doesn't have access to the data regularly, automated, so that they can use it for their analysis and tell you that revenue is underperforming by 19 billion. Expenditure has been cut by 29 billion. This is the implication on growth and poverty and all of those things. So that you, for example, faculty, etc., who are here can also see that same data and come to a view. We are not going very well. So even Parliament is hamstrung if that baseline data is not available. But when that data is available, Parliament also needs to be a bit more up and doing. Like I said, to move away from the very partisan approach we bring to almost everything, and have a very national view of the data so that we can give feedback to the executive to get it done. That would be my response to your question. Okay. I think Khalid wants to say something.
Yeah. You see, data, as you know, especially when we deal with these kind of data within the real-time economic measures, the moment it's out there, is obsolete, right? So having to deal with even inflation, GDP, once the basket is calculated, in retrospect, we have to start to look at what adjustment measures are we making? So the story is not always as it is we'll speak, right? And from an economic point of view and in reality, what I always say is, or when I meet development partners and they say, look, XYZ is not happening, or how can we ensure? And there's a whole lot of noise on the table, and I'm coming again from a bipartisan perspective. What I tell them is, once the budget is read, follow the money. So if you follow the money, right, you get to where it's spent, where it has not been spent, and you know what has really happened to it. And in that case, you're getting real data. You're getting real feed. And in my nearly 1 year working, having fiscal presence, not from a research perspective, within developing economies, right, in its real sense, I find a very huge informal economy that exists at parallel with the formal economy, right? You get, in terms of Forex, that we can preach as much as we can what the Forex figures are whatsoever. He knows. I turn up at my bank, going through the formal channels. I need £7,000 to travel. And I'm told, yeah, this is the interbank rate, but you can't have it. So I'm sent back to the Goro boys. Right. So how do you marry this to actually have a correctional measure of what a real or a true size of that would be in terms of? So we could play the politics with it regardless of or where we come from a political lens, right? And these boys are serious. I take the informal market very seriously. You want $1 million, they'll get it for you. So imagine people keeping $1 million plus at home under their beds. Right? And no matter how good the rates are, you can't have access to the markets and you're sending me back to them. It won't reflect much. So yes, formally, as a government, we do our best, but it's time has come for us to really formalize. And that's where data comes in. That's where we need to capture people in terms of real data, in terms of biometric features, in terms of what gets into the economy and what gets out. Now, we've just... We're in a hangover period of a very harrowing debt restructuring program that went as far as affecting sensitive items such as pension, which are blue chip investments. So we have had a banking collapse system where people even fear the banks as we speak now to deal with them because, okay, well, I've put my money here, it hasn't really worked for me, I've lost it, so how do we? So we even have a big or an uphill task in trying to have rebuild the confidence within our formal banking structures. He would tell, right? Because it's went down based on what has happened, right? Overheated economy, it's cool enough now. We're trying to get there to be able to turn that corner that we were once told we turned, which we never did. So there's still a long way to get to all of this. That's where academia, civil society, the political space, all of us have a role to play as far as this is concerned. But capturing that real data and by having that parallel economy of the informal and the formal, which sometimes, erroneously, I believe that the informal is much heavier than the formal. It's massive. Real estate, black market, forex, etc. If you accumulate all of this, you'd see how heavy it is and the impact it can have. When this happens, it exposes us to risk, right? And that risk is that we become a very temperamental economy. We can help build all these nice figures. The listing that happens, everything collapses like a deck of cards.
Yeah,
so there's a lot more to be done.
I think you agree with Honorable and the panel that we need the data.
Data is needed, undoubtedly. It's about, but what I'm just trying to say is that real-time data capture is very important in what goes through the streamline. But if we're looking at data post, it may not help in a fast-moving space as forex, inflation, etc., etc.
Okay. So since you are with the microphone, let me come to you.
Okay.
You realized around 2017, 2018, the economy was doing quite well.
Yeah.
Then this issue of COVID-19 and then Russia-Ukraine war came around despite, though we still had some undertones, they came and then they exposed all the issues with the economy. Currently, you hear a lot of people saying the economy is stabilizing. But given the history of the Ghanaian economy, where after every election, just as one of the presenters indicated, we go on a drive to stabilize the economy, then we see the slippages coming all over the place. Given your current position, how do you link issues of transformation, job creation, and transformation? Because job creation is the basic thing that every Ghanaian is thinking about now. And if government does not spend, the private sector wouldn't respond to create that needed jobs for people to be employed. So how do you think about balancing issues of risks to external shocks, economic transformation, and job creation, given the current budget position that the Minister of Finance espoused?
Kanta, if we're to go by our big flagship projects, those are job creation elements in and of themselves, right? Big push, right? Artisanal world, from the masons to the carpenters, etc. If we try to say, oh, look, we're going to have linkages to the 24-hour economy, to the big push agenda alone, where we have construction workers working all along the clock, incentivizing them to do the right thing, we can create jobs. I'd make mention of BPOs, data hubs to come in, what it is, call centers. We have the Accra Digital Centers, how we expanding them across the length and breadth of the country, up and down the country, every nook and cranny of the country, to see how we could have all of these jobs created. As I sat here, I fidgeted with my phone a few times. I could tell you probably 5 out of the text messages that are coming are CVs. Right? Yeah. I want a job here, I want a job there. So can we even have this debate of who the greatest employer is in this country? It is the government or the private sector? That's an interesting debate. Right? The numbers we may have an argument to. Right? So, but if we live in an economy where the government is competing with the private sector in terms of employment and still have to create an enabling environment, then we need to reconfigure that debate. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong perspective to this, but it's about the engagement we need to have as far as job creation is concerned. Again, I may be erroneous in my interpretation of a sad event that happened a few days ago, which had to do with a stampede. That's a big national security threat staring at us. Right? Look at the numbers that went out there wanting to go through military screening that someone might have failed not to anticipate. But these are people believing that there's confidence back in the system. Let me give it a try. I may have my chance. So all of this, and this is going to be absorbed by government, not the private sector. But if you look at our flagship projects, again, this is where the reset agenda is, and where the president is very conscious about this in terms of not creating that, exposing ourselves to externalities or the shocks of whatever will happen on the gold market or the oil market. I mean, we've come to even inherit a very dry oil market. There's nothing happening upstream. When I say nothing, this is me exaggerating. It's very infinitesimal in the economic sense of it. Very, very little. Right, so I tease my colleagues at the Petroleum Commission that what's really happening? Are you getting your revenues? Because not much is going on. But I know there are exploration in the Voltairean Basin that may come in to bring in something. We haven't inherited much as far as the last 8 years of the petroleum sector is concerned. Right, so but we have gold and cocoa, right, which are also exposed to externalities and international shocks. If that happens, where are we left with? So this is where the president is very conscious in pushing and policing every sector. And you could see how important these play. You could see there's a consciousness of him being present at where all of these, or he or the vice president is present at where all of these initiatives are being launched and the rate at which they are going. I mean, when I sit back, again, this is no excuse whatsoever. This is like a near 1-year-old government that is still trying to reset itself and reset the whole nation for a 4-year mandate. Right? I'm not saying there's more time. In the day of a political life, 1 day is enough, but a lot more is happening in terms of policy formulation. As you see, the 24-hour economy, a secretariat has been formed. They are fully staffed now, trying to go through implementation stages.
Just a quick one. I see Honorable also want to make an intervention. On the issue of the 24-hour economy, is it the case that we are now putting in place the needed infrastructure? For instance, if you take the big push, it's supposed to facilitate aspect of the 24-hour economy. Course, I also hear there is supposed to be a model market across the country.
Yes.
Some allocation has been done now. So should Ghanaians rather see the current things happening as preparation for a takeoff of the 24-hour economy, or there are specific things that are being done to make sure that people start feeling what they expect to see when it comes to the 24-hour economy?
Obviously, from a policy point of view, some foundational work needs to be done, some groundwork needs to be done. Again, another erroneous perspective with which we go to the 24-hour economy with in terms of engagement or public discourse, or even at the parliamentary level, is that we expect a certain big thicket money to be allocated in the budget to say this is what goes to the 24-hour economy. If you look at the concept or what we envisage as a 24-hour economy, it is a PPP, right? So it's a private-public partnership agreements, whereas government creates the enabling environment for that to happen. And by this, we have a demand side of it and we have an incentive side of it. So when we talk about the demand side of it, it means that these are new creations that may happen. When we say an incentive side, and forgive me when I belabor this example, let's say Airport Shell, which runs a 24-hour downstream petroleum industry where you go to buy fuel, right? If we say they already existing, so it means that there's an incentive side to that. We say, okay, after midnight, can we recalibrate these pumps to give a certain level of maybe a tax relief or an incentive to them to create more airport shells around to run 24/7? That is an incentive. A demand side of it is the pool. Okay? There's this sector saying that we want to. Because you travel around, entertainment, hospitality, hotel services, concierge, shut after 10 p.m. Right. And there's a vast difference between a night economy and a 24-hour economy. And there's a vast difference between an entertainment economy and a 24-hour economy. But the mix of all of these things does not really allow the unpacking to happen, to have a full appreciation. But yes, preparation needs to be done. Foundational measures need to be put in place. And at that measure, a very strong foundation. But let's not open our eyes and be looking for a big ticket item on the budget to say this is allocated to 24-hour economy. It's a policy that is supposed to create an enabling environment for its existence. And as you rightly said, big push, other flagship projects will all have linkages to the 24-hour economy as we roll out our flagship projects.
Honorable. Can I very quickly intervene? So I've agreed with Dr. Khalid on several other things he said, but this one, let me disagree with it. First, let me caveat by saying that I wish them well as they go about pursuing their programs. However, if you look at the programs they have designed, with greatest respect to all the work that they have done, and you look at their first year fiscal performance, they should have some concerns. And let me explain to you. You see, the growth and transformation agenda that they are hoping to achieve is heavily dependent on government. Take their agric interventions, agric for economic transformation agenda, Feed Ghana and Kokon Kitinkiti. Then take the industrial agenda, that's a 24-hour economy program. And I'll even add big push to the broader thematic industrial sector. The problem is that you need government to be able to find those resources to fund them. Else, they will not be different from all the other ideas we've had on paper that have not translated. It is not as though the policy framework is one that actually entices private sector on its own to fund and execute. So take the big push. In the 2025 budget, they budgeted to spend 13 billion cedis on the big push. And when we raise the fact that if you look at your big push 4 years and you divide by 4, 13 billion is woefully inadequate. They said it was for preparatory work. As at Q3, they have only committed 7.3 billion or so out of that. The spending is even lower than that. In the 2020, and I argue that it is primarily because the revenues are not there. I've shown you the numbers. It's not as though it's fiscal discipline. Or if they had it, they would spend it. Because there are a lot of contractors on their neck, even on the old projects. They don't have it. Nemo that non-quarter bet. That's why they are not able to spend it. In the 2026 budget, they've announced 30 billion for big push. That is what is going to deliver the growth in construction. And they've also even announced the number of jobs that they expect to get along the way when the construction is taking place. And you find a lot of jubilation. Okay, so what is the revenue picture like? Because big push depends on government money. What's the revenue picture like? How has a fiscal strategy been calibrated to generate that revenue so that you can actually spend 30 billion on big push to deliver the growth and jobs and the transformation? And I'm telling you that if you look at the strategy they put down, first they said we're going to move us from 13% to 18% of GDP. On paper, it looks good, so that you get the revenues to spend. They have actually now moved us from 13.9, they are bringing us down to 13.3. We are losing 0.6% of GDP. So if it is heavily dependent on government spending, and your fiscal strategy is not delivering on the revenues, you will be hot. And so they may want to take a second look at that. And I say this from a point of feedback. We did some of those things. It got us into trouble at a point. You want to have a second look at it?
Okay, so Prof,
Prof,
you have an intervention, then I go to Mr. Buti.
I just wanted to mention that I think one of the things the incumbents should do is to come up with a clear roadmap. And that is going to help the technocrats to also offer their advice. So a clear roadmap is what we did. And then secondly, from Honorable, I think what we have as a problem in this country is revenue mobilization. We need to take a very serious look at that sector and find ways and means of mobilizing or generating revenue on a more sustainable basis. We can't keep relying on tax this, tax that, bringing new tax. No. Look at our natural resource. We have so much. The laws, the regulations. What are we doing about that? So that we can harness and benefit more as Ghanaians from our own natural resources. That is the area we should be looking at. We can't just tax this, tax that, and then we have large informal sector. We won't arrive anywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, so Mr. Boti, you realize that the conversation has been financing this expenditure, where to get the money here and there. So if you look at the 2026 budget, I think the minister made mention of going back to the domestic bond market as well. From your perspective, what strategy do you think government can adopt in a way they can still raise money, okay, to fund what they want to undertake and not still crowd out the private sector? Because private sector, one of the things we have in this country is the cost of borrowing. It's huge. And we expect this private sector to take charge. Honorable was making the point that it looks like the interventions, government is taking up the lead. Prof. Khalid also made the point that, look, it's supposed to be PPP. And if it's supposed to be PPP, it means that private sector will need some form of funding. And that should come from our financial institutions. So what key strategies do you think government can adopt in a way that the private sector may not be crowded out and they'll still get the needed access to credit to fund the development we expect?
It's simple, stabilize the economy. I made a point earlier. Truth is, government cannot do it all. Indigenous capital won't even come close. You need to create the enabling environment that gives owners of private capital comfort to want to invest in the sectors. Okay, so let's think of this project, the Terminal 3 project. Government set up a Ghana Integrated Infrastructure, GIF, is that a name? Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, yeah. Capitalizing with about 325 or so million USD. I think that was part of the Eurobond proceeds, I think in 2016 or so thereabout, that funded that. And then on the back of that, GIF is able to issue, if you like, some participatory investments worth about 225 or so million, and has catalyzed since over 2.8 billion to one, do Terminal 3 project and do a number of other, I think 12 in total, right? That 2.8 billion would have been borrowed funds sitting on government book and will be causing debt distress and all that. By creating the enabling environment that allows GIF to catalyze those private funding, we're able to do a number of other projects. I mean, think of the Accra-Kumasi expressway we're talking about. Brilliant project. It's going to be self-funding from what we are told and all that. Why on earth is government using limited resources to fund this? And so when you create the environment, and I've been speaking to DFIs, different providers of finance, on getting concessional funds and different other kind of stuff to do some of the things we want to do as part of my portfolio at GCB Bank. One thing they tell you, yes, beautiful proposition, but your country risk will not allow us to come in. And it is so because until recently, you were in default, even at B-, which is where we are now. It's a junk, several notches in junk.
if you have to attract the right capital, patient capital at the right cost, you have to be talking triple B minimum to be able to get the kind of funding that is cheap enough to do these things for long term. So if government is so fixated on delivering infrastructure in the name of legacy, and you talk of, I look at 24-hour plus, again, beautiful ideas. We've seen a lot of it. But look at the models, 8 of them in total. All of them capital-intensive projects. And you trusting a private sector to fund it because it's a PPP. But invariably, we see these things turn out to be that if the government's skin is not in the game enough, you don't even get the private player to come in. The negotiation process, the selfish interest in the process makes it, did Honorable Jogati not host a railway conference in Ghana here in the first term of the NPP administration? I saw an Indian investor who stood up on TV and said, we have the money, we have the plan, we will do it. Where is the railway? There is, I believe in the theory, or if you like, the school of thought that says governance is best, or government is best that governs least. And for our kind of economy where the resources are not there, I think that government needs to do the barest minimum and focus on creating the environment that allows, today pension sector has 90 billion in assets, and they are all in government of Ghana bills. Imagine the conditions are right for pension sector to say the Accra-Kumasi road, pension sector is funding, and there are the safeguards to ensure that revenues are collected and pension assets are safeguarded. Think of the growth it will not deliver or it will deliver. Same as insurance sector, same as the many other financial sector players. But we're not focused on that. If you go to government with even a PPP idea to fund something, because of the interest of the person you are negotiating with, these things could be frustrated to a point that you will get tired and have a part of a number of these. So I'm trying to say that to your question specifically, we have needs, yes. We need to grow as a country, yes. But if we're going the way we're going, carrying all of the load, Agenda 111, for instance, again, beautiful idea, we need hospitals. But who builds 111 hospitals at a go? Right? So if you have the resources that started, most of them to lentil levels, some to certain levels, and none of them is useful. If we have resources to do 50 of them, even at a go, or 30 at a go, that delivers the goods. The nurses that have been employed since 2021, they would all get job. Will that be more beneficial? So I think those are the cost benefit analysis. Those kind of considerations is what I think government is not very good at, unfortunately. And I think that is the source of our problem. And so to your question, government should govern least and then provide the environment for private sector capital to take the lead.
All right. So just 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute. Not a disagreement that will be very harsh, but to add a spice to this in terms of giving another perspective to it. Government is doing its best, and we expect the private sector to respond same. Now, when we say best, I'm going to contextualize it within the very example that we're discussing on the table, which is infrastructure. Now, we say big push. There's a budgetary allocation to big push. Now, what it means is that if contractors raise IPCs, they'll be paid, because there's some amount of allocations to that, right? But what we have failed to realize is that the last 7 years or 6 years, and I'm sure the Honorable Kojo will agree with me, having been Works and Housing Minister, where contractors have stayed so long a time, right, not to be paid, right? And that never happens. Mind you, within the road sector or certain infrastructure sector, there's an element of delay on interest payments, which keeps accruing to a certain period and ballooning. So we've reached a stage now where there is no investor confidence even in the construction industry. With big push, if they come to your bank, contractors come to your bank and you turn them down. Even with now the highways and urban roads are not your friends. So what incentive is there again for government to produce? So this is where there have to be some real thinking.
And of course, Prof. Khalid, if you were in my shoes or you were in our shoes, they will not be your friends either. Now, who wants to have 67 billion in investment?
They were the best of your friends.
Who wants to have 67 billion locked up in something called arrears by design or by whatever, and then for the next 4 years, your money is locked up? Who wants to do that?
No, but they were your friends years ago.
Okay, I think, let me take charge now.
Yeah.
Let me take charge now. I think he came up with a proposal that we have some cheap funds, like the pensions and all those things, but rather we don't have the right policy framework to attract these people onto. So there's a
locked up in long-term investments that to even unlock those clauses, bringing them back is cost.
So I think,
but
we
it's a good
we can
thinking.
make progress.
Yeah, we can make progress.
He made a very good suggestion.
Yeah.
All right, but you want to make a point, or let me just go to Dr. Kofi and then come back to. So you were talking about inequality, and at least I think the past few publications of the annual household income and expenditure survey shows that NEET, like not in education, training, or employment, is going up, meaning that unemployment is an issue that is rising. If you look at the 2024 budget statement, what clear initiatives can you point to that will help reduce the issue of inequality in the country and also accelerate poverty reduction in the country? Do you think there is a magic in the 24-hour economy thing?
Thank you, Dr. Kanta. There are social protection programs in the budget. And I will notably start with this broad perspective where social protection allocation was calibrated from 0.6 to 0.9% of GDP. So this is very, very important. It's a conventional vehicle for targeting the extremely poor. It has nothing so much to do with reinventing the wheel. But what this has afforded the country now is that the targeting now is broader or deeper if the beneficiaries are going to have elevated kind of support. And to contextualize, within the social protection increase package, we are having the livelihood empowerment against the poor. For instance, moving to target about 400,000 extremely poor households. And this is very commendable, given that at the inception of the LEAP, we had barely about 1,645 households. And somewhere around 2023, about something more than 300,000 households. And the government is moving boldly to move this number to 400,000 households. And it is very important in poverty reduction, specifically because the extremely poor, they have this propensity or proclivity towards transmitting poverty. So they can really transmit poverty. So when you attenuate their situation, you are in a position to break that vicious cycle of poverty. I can also quickly bet on policies, the heavy expenditure, the heavy investment in basic education, infrastructure, and learning environment. When you look at the tiers within the basic education having to do with kindergarten, primary school, and the junior high school, about 600 infrastructure in terms of building. We are also talking about TR, bungalows, and materials ranging to millions, our textbooks and curriculum. So the discourse within that space is moving even beyond enrollment to issues of quality when it comes to education. And this is at the foundational level. Because on the onset, if these inequalities should manifest, especially on the part of this investment in basic education, if these inequalities manifest, it takes a very long time for them to be corrected. And it has implications on educational progression as well as career prospect going forward. So it's a big one in terms of inequality reduction. I will touch again on other perspective, but the 24-hour economy and the big push is not really for poverty reduction per se, it is for prosperity. You know, in terms of poverty targeting, poverty is more segmented. We are dealing with a segment of the population, and identifying the very big step in poverty alleviation. So I see the big flashing, the big push, the 24-hour economy that is centered more towards prosperity, much more than issues on poverty. Yeah, there may be spillover that can spare poverty reduction. So I will go into the agri-based, agri-business initiatives, because we have core of the poor in the rural areas, and especially the national policy on these oil palm development, for instance, holds a lot of prospect. If you look at the land requirement for these policy appropriation, it is indicating clearly that this will be centered in the rural areas. And just imagine plantation and production capacity across this value chain. These will bring alternative livelihood and increase rural earnings. And it is a social equalizer. And it will bridge that gap in terms of within inequality, that catch-up that we want to see between the rural and the urban divide. Because within our space, especially in the developing countries, poverty and inequality are principally rural phenomena. So these are some of the policies, but I am cautious on 24-hour economy. If you are talking about youth prosperity, yes, maybe. If you are talking about the big push, the spillover may benefit the poor, but the sequencing and the prioritization of these big ticket programs can even spare greater inequality, which would dampen that growth elasticity when it comes to poverty reduction, especially when the rollout are starting from Accra, Kumasi, like the expressway, for instance. I want to, I really want to see that interacting two big cities in the country. I think it's long overdue, but we should understand that this has the propensity of deepening the South-North divide, and it may not facilitate that kind of impactful poverty reduction.
All right, so thank you very much. Can we give our panelists a hand of applause? I think they've done so well. Now it's your turn to ask them all the questions that have come to your mind since they started speaking on the issues and since we started the conversation up here. So if you have a question, just put up your hand, or better still, let's come and line up. Yes, we need first 5 people up over here. Our panelists, please, when you come, direct your question to a specific, your comment or question to a specific panel member here, so that they take note and respond accordingly. Yes, you are allowed to ask only one question, and it should be short. Thank you.
Please, I have 3 questions actually. 3 short questions.
Just one. Select the most important one. So if you have to think about it, give the microphone to the next person and come back.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. So, in relation to the project,
who are you directing the question to?
To Sharif Kali. Yeah. Yeah. In relation to, regarding women, as in the provision of funds, providing the fund on a grant base, or for them to bring up their own money and then subsidize. And also, if they come in for a loan, assuming it's a loan, is the interest rate going to be high or low, since they do not have capacity to provide quiet.
Within which context are you asking? 24-hour economy? What?
The women.
That's a good.
Thank you very much. My name is Philemon, reading BS Information Technology Level 400. I'm not too technical when it comes to the amount and the money and the fiscal deficit that we are mentioning, but I want to direct my question to Mr. Sharaf. I have followed the conversation a little bit, and I've heard the Minister of Finance making a comment that yes, he's going to borrow, but not on the international market, but domestically he's going to do that. I followed the interview with Evans Mensah, PMS Press. I want to ask a question that if the minister is planning to borrow domestically, and there is a feeling that is going to put a bit pressure on the private sector, as in competing with the government to access loans domestically. People are saying that that is not true in a good direction. I want to see how you justify this for me. Thank you very much.
All right, so my name is Gideon Kwanse, a postgraduate student. Yes, my question goes to Honorable Kojo Opon-Nkrumah. As a postgraduate student and as a student in general, we welcome the strong budget allocation to the Ministry of Education. And I know it will go a long way to help every student in the country. And then line 563 of the budget talks about the National Research Fund. And then as partners to national development through research, I want to find out from you, Honorable Minister, what role will Parliament play in ensuring early release of funds to support postgraduate work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Panel. My name is Isaac Ebenezer-Brew. I want to direct my question to Dr. Raymond. Yes, I think we have already established that we are having a problem with providing real-time data, which is going to help us a lot. Now, my question is, what do you think, or what do you believe that there are, the specific data-driven tools that the government should really consider in order to actualize our 2026 budget, in order to promote the jobs that we are looking at, productivity, and even help solve multidimensional poverty? Thank you.
My name is Charity. I'm a postgraduate student, School of Economics. And I want to thank the Department of Data Science and Economic Policy for this opportunity, because I've always looked forward to see NDC and NMPP. And today I have actually seen them. And I'm taking a different turn, because I'm going to more or less like contribute or say what I think rather than asking a question. So my issue is that having to do with, we've got policies. There are policies. So for example, the past government had come up with 1D, 1F, the one village, one dump, and what have you. Now the current government is coming in with a 24-hour economy and what have you. And I see them to be good policies, but the fundamental problem has to do with politicians. We have to make sure that these politicians or the government is held accountable to whatever he or she says when they come to government. So far, it has always been a he. So what he says when he comes to government, and how is it supposed to be done? Because, that is supposed to be done in the direction of we holding them accountable, asking them what they promised us and what they have spelled out and they haven't been able to fulfill, right? But when we try to do that, we see that they are staging a protest. Like they sit on the floor. On the good side, I hadn't seen Honorable Kojo sitting on the floor when they staged. But then we had your colleagues doing those things. So if we want to hold them accountable, and then they have to fulfill what they have promised us, and this is what we do, then it means we are not going to realize, be up to tax on what we have actually told the Ghanaians to do. So why are you doing that to us?
Hello, my name is James Christos, BSc level 200 student. And my questions goes like this. I just wanted to ask that this Prof. Sharif was touting the government for them bringing inflation down to 8%. In 2024, inflation was 23%. But in 2024, when I used to buy Belacqua Active, it was at the price of 5 cedis. But right now, inflation is at 8%, but the Belacqua Active have increased to 6 cedis. So I don't understand. So I want for you to please explain for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. My question is directed towards Professor Sharif. So on Saturday on X Space, I had the opportunity to analyze the budget from an undergraduate economist perspective, and I had some few questions. And then
just ask one.
So as a student who will be completing school in 2 years' time, mine is centered on job creation, and so I realized that the budget aimed at resetting growth, jobs, and then economic transformation. Now my question is that how would the government ensure that this projected economic growth translates directly into sustainable jobs, I mean, for tertiary graduates, more especially because I'm a tertiary student, than just transient or low-wage employment jobs, just like saying that during the big push agenda, you know, at those times, people in the construction field are going to be the ones to be enjoying much. And also, after that, people will be selling at the roadside. I mean, but all these are not very sustainable jobs. So I want to know what plan the government has that at the end of this, we are going to get sustainable jobs that will absorb more youth to, I mean, bridge and then reduce the unemployment. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, though I'm not a panel member, but I think the last but one question, I should handle it before any of our panel members. Okay, so I'm being taxed that I should allow them to answer the questions.
You try, give your academic perspective, then we'll come with the political.
Because I wanted to put out the
question
education.
Specifically at Dr. Khalid. Let him answer his question.
I wanted to put out the education that inflation, once is a positive figure that is announced, they are only telling you that the speed at which prices go up has reduced, no prices reducing. So let's get that basic concept. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think the academic has bailed me. But
no,
one thing
by the way, just before you go ahead,
yeah.
So what you describe is not called inflation, it's called deflation. What you just described is called deflation, where the rate of inflation is negative. That is the instance you expect prices to start decreasing. Right? That is not what we have. Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, yes, some education here. We're all learning, isn't it? But I mean, one thing I find fascinating about that question is you're very posh students. I mean, yeah, a student to be drinking Belacqua Active, eh? You must be posh. That's just by the way, right? It's a joke. Don't take it seriously. So, I mean, yes, I think the education have been given to that effect. And as you would see, there's no direct correlation between that and price. So you might find it happens is that it creates an enabling environment for functionality to happen within the economic space and to have some expansions and contractions where it could be positively used or not. So I hope that is answered. And the Women's Development Bank, as I rightly indicated, it's a unique proposition. It's not a reinvention of the wheel. And our banker here would agree with me that the commercial banking space is crowded, right? To even have a new entry of a commercial bank, you're going to have a struggle. Gone are the days when you have all the Nigerian banks coming in. Now we've reached a certain level of saturation in that creation, which is why the ingenuity that comes with the Women's Development Bank is that we have a target market. And that target market is the bottom of the pyramid. And when we say the bottom of the pyramid, we're talking about market women that have, zero access to collateral or little to no access to collateral. We're talking about interest-free loans. But the component of this is that there is a training, education, and skills empowerment or economic literacy aspect or dimension to this, where we grow people from collateral-free to having collaterals that can have large financial markets in terms of borrowing, where we can hand them over to the likes of GCBs and the like. But our specific targets now are the bottom of the pyramid. And we're looking at interest-free loans, quasi-interest-free loans, depending on the assessments we are having. We're looking at deploying USSD devices. We're looking at deploying kiosk systems. So we're not looking at your usual suit and tie, brick and mortar glazing banking systems. We're looking at proper penetration of the market. So in terms of our consultation processes, we've met market queens, we've met item leads, we've met susu collectors. We're in the process of we've engaged the real people we feel these are. And at the board level, we have market queens sitting in there because this is targeted at them. We always pretend to as if we know everything that happens around us. No, we don't. I mean, it is only in the process. I've done economics, I've taught it, I've done it, written papers and all of that. But it's in the process of the formation of this bank that I got to realize that apart from having market queens in our markets, we have what we call item leads. And by item leads, we're talking about tin tomatoes. Who leads that? We're talking about tomato sellers. We're talking about onions sellers. I never knew this existed until I got through the process. So we don't know it all. So we've brought everyone to the table to see how we can, and those that we're deploying that to. So it's quasi-interest free. It's not really a big deal. We have other agencies like GEA providing other services with interest and the likes of that. So moving on to the next question, which I think has to do with a big push. I mean, when we talk about a big push, and construction industry creating workers, I was specific to mention artisans, right? It's not targeted mainly at graduates, much as would have graduate engineers, graduate, building technologies and stuff like that, getting into the job train of that. But the direct target is artisans, right? But in terms of sustainable job creation, we did mention about the Jumawura project where we have, incubator hubs, spinning off, spin-off companies, and encouraging you to be entrepreneurs, just not to be dependent on, government employments within state agencies, but you could also be innovative enough to become an employer yourself. So there's a lot more happening within the government flagship policies and as part of the 24-hour economy itself in light. So, one thing in terms of the engagements when we talk about 24-hour economy that many of us tend to miss is that even allows home balance between the functionality of what a mother does and what a father does at what particular period in time and who takes over. I know it's a novelty that is coming, but what time it's going to catch up with all of us and we'll have a real full appreciation. It may be an uphill task now trying to convince many, but when we get there, the reality of it will be felt as the Secretariat rolls out its plans and given that the policy has been launched, which again, we allow the minority to critique, is governance and is part of the process that will make it future-proof to carry it forward. I don't know if I've exhausted all of the domestic borrowing, right? I think someone was asking that the finance minister says it. I mean, yes, ECO 101, I don't know if that's it or it's Raymond, you help me here. But you know that when you borrow domestically, it could be neutral, it could be negative, it could be positive. It all depends on how you borrow and what you use to borrow or what you've borrowed for. Right. I mean, borrowing domestically in terms of advantages are that it helps grow the local economy. It allows us, our treasury bills, local bonds allows us the local participants to tap into it. Yeah, to tap into the local investment market. It's just that when we borrow and we use it for consumables, within the domestic space, it might not go a long way to help us. So it depends on what we do. And the finance minister, as we all have confidence in him, is going to deliver on this. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah, let Dr. Kofi Nti answer his question, then we come to so that we end with Honorable and then go back for our last set of questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So on the issue of data paucity within the poverty and inequality landscape is a worrying situation, and conventionally the government funds flagship surveys such as the Living Standard Survey, which is used to track the poverty and living arrangement of people in the country. But yeah, over time, the government has equally important surveys that are coming out through the official National Statistics Office, and they are competing interests. Ideally, from the 1990, after every 5 years, we do have a major living standard survey akin to what we have in other jurisdictions, especially in the developing countries, heavily assisted by the World Bank. But for some time now, that kind of a cycle of routine production has been absent. From 2017 to 2015, we don't have any living standard survey in the country. This is almost going to a decade. And are we dealing with a census, even a census which covers the entire country, that is planned for a decade, and living standard, that sample, just a portion of representative sample of households, is even taking that longer. So we need to leverage now on administrative data. And with this administrative data, the caution has to do on compliance, because this is a data set that is seamlessly generated once the end of year reports are written by the ministries, by institutions. Automatically you have your administrative data. And on that front, one of the issues that has to be anchored is unifying definitions. Otherwise, when various reporting are done, maybe a job is created for a month and it's being reported. In another instance, we have a job for a year. And that kind of a unifying framework is so much needed. But in the data ecosystem now, we need frontier technologies. We are dealing with satellite data now in most countries that can even target the extremely poor based on satellite imagery information of their living condition, i.e. the kind of roof, the neighborhood in which they find themselves. So these are innovative ways by which we can bridge that data gap. Then I also like to mention process, and we should do this cautiously, especially on the front of inequality, because for about 8 years now, a consistent representative data on basic inequality metric like Gini is absent in the country, and every time you have to refer to a 2017 situation. So that ties to my recommendation that has to do with the public sector earning data. So we need access to that kind of administrative data, which the academia can be involved. And of course, this will not be an individual level data, a sort of data that will be aggregated by sectors for us to know that kind of disparities that we have in the system. Even the informal sectors can come in through the tax system to know their tax and gauge the kind of inequality we have in the country. These are some of the measures that can be adopted to bridge the paucity of data we are having currently.
Well, my intervention was about, I didn't get asked a question, but I'm trying to find a problem for myself. My intervention was about the debt issuance thing and whether it's crowding out private sector and all that. It's erroneous to think that anytime there is borrowing, it translates into crowding out. It's about how much, it's about at what rate. If government goes galloping down everything on the market on a crazy frequency, then of course you are making available very limited for funding for the private sector as well. But if you have a program that is predictable, you're running by, and then these funds you go as and when you have to, then of course, and it's going into targeted areas that deliver the goods, there is nothing wrong with that. So let's not go with that impression. The challenge though, for me, for reopening the market, is actually why I want to make the intervention. You have heard the minister talk about humps in the debt servicing curve for 2027, 2028. Having now just come off from default and then reopening your market, investors are not open to very long-term issuances. You will not do 5-year, you will not do 10-year, you will not do 7-year. It's too long. You need to build back that confidence gradually. Now, if you go the short end, the minimum tenor you can issue for a bond is 2 years. Currently, we're doing up to 1 year. If you do 2 year, if you do 3 year, you'll be adding to the 2027, 2028 HAMs. That already is a problem we're trying to solve. So my question is, if government wants to open the market, at what tenor point and at what price? Because your restructured bonds, the highest yield on them for the general category bonds are just 10%. So if you come to market today and there are provisions in that memorandum that bars you from issuing bonds that are at rates that puts the old holders of the DDE bonds at disadvantage. So at what price point are you coming to the market that will not disadvantage the DDE holders, will not bloat your financing costs, and will also not add to the harms that we are seeking to correct? I think those are for me, the considerations that should inform when and how to come to market and what tenors to issue. Just want to put that across. Thank you.
Let me quickly reflect on some of the issues that have been raised. And maybe I'll start with a quick comment on this inflation and deflation question. That question shows the real life experiences or the lived experiences on the economy. As I mentioned earlier, I speak from a position where we tried a lot of things. Some worked, some didn't work. And it will really break my heart to see this new government go on that same path, where they can learn from where we got things wrong. So for example, sometimes when you rely too much on these macro statistics and you're applauding yourself, you don't realize that the lived experiences of people essentially make nonsense of all the statistics that we are talking about. So for many people, what they are measuring really is cost of living. That's what many people are measuring. And if government over-focuses on inflation, though it is important, and tries to ace it through some, may I say, technical measures on the demand side, without actually dealing with supply side contributors to inflation, and I know Dr. Khalid knows what I'm talking about, you will find out that the cost of living realities of people make nonsense of the statistics that are being published. So for example, when the governor of the central bank appeared before us in parliament, he admitted that to ace inflation, they have had to sterilize about 60 billion Ghana cedis. So they've taken that money from the system and they've packed it so that it's not available to fund any demand. By the way, that is not at zero cost to government. It will come back to hit the Bank of Ghana's books, even under the revised accounting standards that contributed to the loss last year. Because last year, if you recast with the old accounting formula, it's not a loss. But they have changed the accounting formula. So even under that revised one, it will not still be zero cost. But that's a different matter. And my suggestion is that let's focus on what the people are measuring, which is cost of living. It will serve us better. Now, this thing about domestic borrowing, to add a bit to what is being mentioned, you would find that government has a need to borrow because government after governments want to do everything. Instead of governing the least, creating an environment and letting private capital and potential be unleashed. So you'll find out that governments want to do a lot of things. You can't tax the people too much. Your non-tax revenue measures are limited. And so then governments resort to borrowing. If anybody tells you that currently there's no borrowing ongoing and it is now about to start, it's not true. I brought you a copy of the budget. You can get a soft copy online. Go to the appendices. You will find on the summary of economic data, very quickly, Appendix 2A, you will find that government initially planned that they were going to borrow 52 billion Ghana cedis this year. That was a financing program, 52 billion Ghana cedis this year. At the end of the year, they are projecting that they will borrow 39 billion Ghana cedis. If you don't dive into the details, you say, oh, they have done well. They haven't told you that this is because they inherited about 11 billion. If you cast the difference is about 13 billion. It's because they inherited that amount of money, they don't need to borrow it. Now I'm saying to you that if there is this much liquidity in the system, one of the lessons we have learned is that economic policy must be focused on how do you channel that liquidity to become capital available, whether on the primary market or the secondary market, to fund private sector business. If there's 60 billion Ghana cedis excess liquidity, if there's all of this money available, if government contains its appetite and rather uses economic policy to channel it to say, is it stock exchange, is it venture capital trust fund, is it secondary market, so that you, young people who have business ideas, can get technical advice and funding, then it doesn't have to be a burden on the back of the government for the government to be paying. What can Parliament do to ensure that the National Research Fund is released? As you have mentioned, I know it's of interest to you, we'll pay particular attention to it. But what Parliament can do generally is to encourage government to pay attention to automating data, automating the gathering and publishing of data, so that we can see in real time where are the revenues, how are they coming in, so that all, not just this, all of the expenditure commitments can be funded. And that takes me to the last point about data. You know, sometimes in this country, we let partisanship undermine the best of ideas. This need for data was recognized a long time ago. And so you'll recall that there was a heavy effort to move towards digitizing the Ghanaian economy so that we could move a lot of the informal activity into the formal bracket. And I'm going to give you a few specific examples. Unfortunately, we have done so much politics with it that we are undermining the very thing that we need to correct the errors in society. So let me give you a few of those examples. We said we were going on a heavy exercise for national ID. It was made partisan at a point, and you'll recall the NDC at a point even telling their members not to register. But you needed that so that you can now move the tax identification system automatically into the national ID system. So everybody who has a national ID will automatically have a tax identification system. And then you could now check for compliance about who is paying and who is not paying. That's how you found that all these lawyers, all these accountants, all these people who are claiming many other things, even now converted to a digital property address system. Why? So that you can now connect property to person and say that, you have this property, but your tax that you are declaring is only 2,000 cedis. There must be a difference somewhere. You have to be able to explain the difference. We bastardized it. Take something like the travel data in this country. So we then said, let's go for biometric and other card reading machines at the airport when people are traveling. You recall, heavily bastardized. We said we wanted to go for data at the hospitals. Why? So that you could then even model and see the kind of cases that people are presenting. I was in the US quite recently. I was in the US recently. People are writing software just to use artificial intelligence to map patient data and see dominant issues that people are presenting in hospitals. We introduced LIMS. Largely for political purposes, now it's been thrown away. You go to the hospitals, we are using paper to record again, and now we are going to start afresh to introduce, I think, GIMS also. I can go on and on and on, but we are the cause of our own problems. We make a lot of partisanship out of solutions, and it comes back to haunt us. I won't go any further with any further submissions.
So let's take our last set of questions. If you have been here, you can't come back here. New set of people. We just need, let's make it 4. Okay, we have ended it, please. Just nobody should join the queue again. Okay, please, let's give the microphone to our senior citizen. Mr. Zimpa, please don't allow anybody to join the queue again. All right.
Hello.
Short questions.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Paul Nkrumah seems to have convinced me on the need for a national development plan because of what he's calling bastardizing of issues that hold the future for this country. But my question specifically has to do with the Women's Development Bank. Prof. Sheriff, I left UCC a long time ago and joined civil society organizations. But I realized at the base of the pyramid happens to be people all over the country in the rural areas. And I'm thinking how you can reach this crowd that can impact about 30% of people living here at any point in time, being women and farmers and women's groups. What structures? Is it the mass lock? Is it the district assembly system? Is it microfinance organizations who really have their cost of borrowing and this may cause distortions? Or you are coming to have brand new structures as SPVs to reach? And do you think this can service this group within 4 years? Which I doubt. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Benjamin Enumila. I'm a lecturer of the economics department at EUW. First of all, I want to say thank you to Kojo Opon Nkrumah. Some years back, he donated some books, the Dancing Money Box, to me and my school. We are grateful. The main question, my main question goes to Prof. Sharif. It's on the basis of what? Per Kojo Nkrumah's calculation that he mentioned some time back, he said, we have been pumping about 8 billion cedis to support the city artificially. And we know we need some structural changes. And one of them, right, just this weekend I was in Commander. Our roads, thanks, you are doing it very well. But there is something there that can help support our city, the factory, the Commander Sugar Factory. So please, when you go back, inform her that yes, we are getting good roads, we are grateful for that. Please let the sugar factory work. It will support all of us. I'm grateful.
My name is Che Daniel, and I direct my question to Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah. Looking at the theme here, we are having inclusive prosperity and data-driven. And from our senior lecturer, Dr. Raymond Kofinti, now we've seen that the multi-dimensional poverty is not that much declining as it is. And from Dr. Insedu, we got to know that Ghana is projecting at 2057. Now, he was giving us an idea that it's high time that the country should go for a long-term plan where we can structure things, and you got us that time vary. Now, we know in that time vary, looking at the same data we are having from 1992 to this same very year, I've seen that 1 year project and its medium term is not favoring us. Now, looking at the 33-year plan we are planning for Ghana to be uplifted from the low to now the medium, don't we go for the long term? We do factor things in as much that we push for the multi-dimensional poverty. Thank you.
Please, my name is Stephen Amwa. My question is from Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah to Mr. Sharif Khalid. Honorable, in his presentation, raised a point on revenue underperforming by 19 billion Ghana cedis. And besides, government expenditure cut by 28 billion Ghana cedis. Since from the point that he raised this is from the opposition point of view, now that you are in government, how do you convince me that even though revenue is underperforming by 19 billion Ghana cedis, and then besides government expenditure cut by 28 Ghana cedis, there is still going to be fiscal discipline or trajectory on the part of government? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bismarck Minta, and I want to address policy coordination. I think when Mr. Boti was speaking, he did state that there is a new BOG guideline that permits banks to move their non-performing loans to about 10%. However, Mr. Sheriff also did note that the Women Development Bank, of which we all know is going to target women without collateral and all this. Since the banks are giving a target of about 10%, and the majority of the women in which this bank is going to serve don't have the needed requirement, are we not going to move beyond that 10%? And if we are, then is there not an issue with the fiscal side of policy and the monetary side of policy? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Samuel Inimkwatin, and my question is being directed to Mr. Courage. Asking this question because you are in the industry, you are the industry person. You realize that every regime, government states specific figures of employment, but each and every year realize that the unemployment rate persists, most especially graduate unemployment, which shows that there is a gap between academia and the industry. Since you are in the industry person, can you let us know the specific gap that exists in there and how we can curb so we reduce unemployment rate? Thank you very much.
I'm Samuel Akwa. My question is directed to Professor Isiedu. Now, the current government talks about our gold reserve increasing. You've indicated that the SDG, one of the goals is environmental sustainability. But here is the situation. Galamsey has taken over our country. Now, from the academia, beyond publishing articles and writing papers, how are you holding the government accountable to what? Balance the difference between the environmental accounting and the gold reserves that we are building up, which we think it is good. Now, my next question goes to Professor Khalid.
No, please, you can only ask one question.
Right, thank you. I am Boache Daniel. My question goes to Mr. Opon Krumah. Since the currency or the cedi began to behave quite good, we've heard a lot of comments from your side of government trying to explain what could actually be the cause, to the extent of telling us that it is partly because government is not spending and other factors. Recently, you made mention that the government is pumping forex into the system, and you've reiterated that today. What do you think should be done rightly so that the city appreciation is sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Arnold. I'm in level 400. My question goes to Prof. Sharif. You spoke about fiscal consolidation. Despite Ghana's commendable economic recovery, which is marked by reduction in the inflation rate and an increase in the GDP, high public debt remains a problem. It persists. Now, how does the government intend to reconcile her fiscal consolidation efforts with the urgent need for increased spending in infrastructure that will provide job creation? Thank you.
My name is Emmanuel Akom, a level 200 BSc economy student. My question is directed to Honorable Professor Sharif. According to the Finance Minister on PMS Space, he was, according to him, the targeted revenue, and he was making some assumptions that with the abolishment of some taxes and some being reduced, he is depending on compliance. And my question is, what if compliance fails? Is there any plan B for us as a nation or a country?
All right, so I think we will not come back to you. This is the last set of questions. Our panelists will respond to them, and I will plead with our panelists that you be very short in your response. We start with Honorable Kojo Nkrumah, then the microphone will end with Professor Isiedu.
But I think we should give our students a big round of applause for the quality of questions
that they have fielded this afternoon. Very quickly, I think for those who are perhaps not clear about my submissions on the question of a long-term national development plan, please let me try and explain one more time. I support the idea of a long-term national vision. In fact, Ghana has got a long-term national vision. It's called Vision 2057. It's online. You can download a copy and read it. I support it. But there are those who say that how we achieve that vision should be cast in law, in a plan, binding on all governments. That is the one that I say, respectfully, I depart from. Because times change. And so sometimes you need new methods and new approaches. If we lock ourselves in one program from now to 2057, we may have a scenario where conditions have changed. As was mentioned earlier, times have changed, new methods have come in, but we are locked in an old plan. So the vision, I agree with, but as our constitution provides, every 4 years, let the people of Ghana reflect on how. So for example, we were doing 111 hospitals at a go. The people of Ghana listened to the NDC and gave the NDC the mandate. And the NDC now says that they're going to do about 10 a year. So the vision to ensure that we have healthcare facilities in every district hasn't changed. The how is what I changed. I am hopeful that that would further explain it. I also think that this question about fiscal discipline should not be confused for fiscal non-performance. I tried to elucidate on that during my presentation. The first part of fiscal discipline is when you have a program that is fit for purpose. Second part is when you execute it. And third part is when it lands you in the zone where you live within your means. And so, while we are clapping for ourselves on fiscal discipline, let's ask ourselves about fiscal performance as well. Because those numbers, those expenditure numbers, it means research fund. So if you don't raise it, you can't pay the research fund. You'll be left with your fiscal anchor and you say fiscal discipline, but the fund never came. And so that's why I'm saying let's look at fiscal performance. Ghana needs a modern architecture for labor statistics so that you can now answer the question, real jobs, sustainable jobs, as we go forward. The gold reserves build up. Let me just correct it. It's not the new government that says that gold reserves have increased. The old government said that we moved gold reserves from 8 tons since independence to 30 tons between 2021 and 2024 December because we introduced a gold purchase program. The new government is continuing with that program and has announced that, Khalid, if you can help me, they've moved from 30 tons to 31 or 32, thereabout. Yes, 32 plus, using the same gold purchase program. So you can now understand the context in which it's happened. But the worrying thing about that, which we should all pay attention to, is this. If you look at gold export data now, the proportion that the large-scale mines use to export hasn't changed much. The proportion that those who are licensed exporters export hasn't changed. The proportion that has changed, I think about 30 tons extra, is the gold board. It begs the question where all, okay, so that's on one side. On the other side, everybody admits we have a problem with Galamsey. And Galamsey doesn't provide maize or rice. It produces gold. And gold export is illegal now. So who's buying that gold? And it's a problem we have to confront. Else we ourselves will be funding Galamsey while we are trying to deal with the forex situation. The permanent solution to the forex situation is not in pumping dollars into the economy. The permanent situation is in ensuring that now that balance of trade is positive, balance of payment will align. There are a lot of exporters who are exporting and are not repatriating their funds back into the jurisdiction. There are a lot of banks that are still holding monies in their nostro accounts. There are a lot of people who are using digital assets to do transactions. I'm happy to know that the Bank of Ghana now wants to come to the table with a digital assets bill so that we can regulate that space. So now we've crossed the first threshold, which is getting balance of trade to be positive, we have to get balance of payment to come as close as possible to that. And then the de-dollarization of the Ghanaian economy should not just be in rhetorics. We can announce de-dollarization, but if you get to the front of airport police station and people are still selling dollars, then you know that that announcement is just audio money. It hasn't translated into anything. I thank you for the opportunity.
The bit about gaps in employment data and all that, to be fair, I have never worked close to HR. I don't have visibility on that kind of data. What I do know is that statistical service doesn't collect unemployment data as frequently as you see in jurisdictions like the US and other places where it's a monthly survey with a defined methodology. They get data and it's used for monetary policy decisions and all that. In our space, I think every now and then mobilize resource and do that. And so the issue would be about institutionalizing that data collection and then getting the appropriate tools to do it. And then we can module our policy decisions based on what the employment levels are, what is reported from these public programs as employment. Sometimes when you drill deeper, it's quite funny because that you cited some Commander Sugar Factory somewhere. Even the sugar canes haven't come up here, let alone harvest. And then we already counting that we created maybe 2,000 jobs, 3,000 jobs. And that is part of the record. They say that and move on. And so 2 years to come, 3 years to come, those people that we say we've employed, are they really employed? So there is always, whatever is reported as unemployment data, there are those who have voluntarily disclosed that. There are those who may never talk about it. And so the data is not accurate. Even in the advanced countries, you won't get a perfect data on unemployment, but something that is reasonably close with a model. And that is what I think we need to get, so that in our planning, we are creating jobs at the right places for the right skill set of people. I mean, how does government know how many people have graduated with IT background? How does government know these people are in, say, agric and all of that? And how do we enable the creation of jobs around those skills? So we see jobs come up, and then someone who studied whatever can walk in and say, I want to be a banker, I want to be this, I want to be that. Skills mismatch. Of course, you can pivot a career. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we do not have an idea who knows what or who has what and where who is, and then we say we are promoting programs that create jobs, invariably you are promoting rural migrations and all that, because these people would want to move into the places they feel they can find jobs. And the reason you see unfortunate death of innocent people in the name of trying to find job. I mean, so that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
You don't have a question. Lucky you. Okay. I'll start from the base. Okay. So in terms of compliance, I think there was a question regarding revenue mobilization and compliance to fiscal consolidation, given that the revenues may be low, and if the revenues are low, how are we going to, when we're talking about issues of compliance, it's a continuum. It's not static to say, okay, well, we're not getting X amount of revenue when it comes to tax compliance issues. So the government, from time to time, reviews the policies to see, okay, what innovative measure could we put in place to create ease of compliance or to make compliance easy? What incentives can we put in place? So let's say in Q1 or quarter one, revenues were very low. Government will have to rethink, see what sweeteners they can put in place and what measures. It's not every time you put punitive measures in place to say, look, I'm going after non-tax compliance people. It may be counterproductive. So there are diverse measures as the government moves within space to space, and from time to time, they review to see where compliance rates are, and they could inject something in to help ameliorate that situation. We talk about fiscal consolidation. Okay, so again, that's quite, or fiscal discipline. When we're talking about fiscal discipline, we're talking about performance of revenue as well, and how well we're doing, right? How could we, or what measures could be put in place? And you realize that the last budget and this budget, much as it holds heavy or big ticket items, it's quite frugal in terms of spending or government expenditure, cutting off expenditure within certain sectors of the economy, ministries, what have you. I know sometimes people tend to say, okay, we want to underestimate some of the cuts that have been made. But the cuts should not only be viewed from the kind of savings that would be made in monetary terms. It's also the sort of motivation it puts in the system to actually help in terms of what consolidations and actually looking at the physicals of the book. So there are diverse ways to look at it. Commander Sugar Factory, I know it's a political thing, right? I can count on my fingers a number of trade ministers that's probably lost their jobs based on Commander. And it's the elephant in the room. But again, it's not as simplistic as we always see it, as Boti rightly indicated, getting the raw materials. But we're looking at creating a sustainable value chain from ethanol, you're getting every bit of it. None of it is waste. You get your ethanol, you get your alcohol, you get your sugar, etc., etc. You know that when these things happen, there's a big sugar cartel or big sugar cartels that feel that, look, if we start to produce this locally, this is what's going to happen. All right, but that's not to say that we've reneged on that. I know where the question is coming up. My boss is from Commander, so I knew why you're putting that, sticking that to my face. We're going to relook at it, and government is actually exploring measures as a way of reviving it. It's done, it's happened before, right? Back in the day, why can't we do it again? So that is very possible. Okay, the hydra-headed question of Women's Development Bank. I mean, from his civil society perspective, it tells you that he really understands what is happening. And to let the cattle out, or to let the cat out of the bag, we're actually looking at an SPV to actually see how we could deliver this. But in terms of that, we are learning experience from the GEAs, which used to be NBSSI. Right now, GEA, we're looking at, we engage microfinance agencies, we engage, modeled on the local terminology of susu collectors, which are very effective way of actually penetrating. So as I said, we're not looking at proper brick and mortar, suit and tie, glazing buildings of what a bank is. But much as we would have that existing, right, we would have penetration in SSD forms. Mobile penetration is very huge, even in analog forms. We're going to build systems on these to actually penetrate, to have the needs assessment of who actually can tap into this. It's not a 4-year mandate, it's a long-time mandate that would see the revisions and the lessons learned and what we could do to actually have the real impact of what it is. We're not saying the first year will be the best, the second year will be the best, or the fourth year would be excellent. But it's a journey we are embarking on, and we're going to have full experience learned through the journey. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the gentleman who was talking about Galamsey, I mean, Galamsey is an issue that we all have to do something about. It's not a one-man's business. But the only thing I want to say is that it's all about responsible mining. At the end of the day, we're talking about responsible mining. But how do we get there? That's what we have to think about. And then the other thing too is our mining laws. I think we will have to revisit our mining laws one day. I don't know when it will happen, but we'll have to revisit our mining law. I would say that because there have been so many mentioning of revenue mobilization, the fact that we are not raising revenues, and that constrains our efforts at development, right? But what is the way to go? The easiest way would be to tap into our own natural resources and add value. Diversify exports, build our value chains, and then also develop our domestic raw materials base. If we're talking about the Commander Sugar Factory, it's all about the feasibility studies that we carry out. Is it feasible? Do we have the raw materials domestically? We must ensure that we can feed our factories from here. We're thinking about import substitution, industrialization drive, and at the same time thinking about developing our exports industry. That is how to build a resilient economy. There's no other way out. Thank you.
Yeah. So can we give them a louder hands of applause because they've done so well. So I want to say a very big thank you. Oh, we are done.
Very important because Galamsey is a big thing, right? So you see, gold board, and I think Senior made a very interesting perspective as to where the gold is coming from. Now, if you look at informal, let me just say informal. If you look at the statistics or the numbers on gold from the large-scale multinational mining corporations in terms of production and what comes from small-scale miners, by small-scale miners I mean legally, right? The numbers are so stuck. We're talking probably 43, 47. Right, so what it tells you is that even before the establishment of the gold board, there's been a stark competition between multinationals and small-scale miners in terms of production, right? And the measures the gold board has put in place prevents or calls for fair trade gold in what goes into the streamline of what it is. And that's one of the reasons, the entries of the establishment of the gold board. So looking at the numbers could not be an interpretation that you have a big seepage of illegal gold going into the gold board. So I just wanted to raise that. Yeah.
So I think if you allow the politicians, they will take all the time. But I want to say a very big thank you to all our panelists. We are very grateful. The Department of Data Science and Economic Policy is very grateful to have you elaborate on the budget statement. And I think one of the things we are going to bring out after this is come up with a brief on what has taken place here. We'll try to share it with the policymakers. We'll send a copy to the Ministry of Finance. We'll bring a copy to the Parliament of Ghana. And we hope Honorable will push whatever we come up with. Thank you. And then I hand over to the MC.
Please, let's do it for Dr. Kanta. A bigger one for Dr. Kanta. And the biggest to our panelists. And so I must say that public affairs, we found a mentee in Dr. Kanta. Very soon we'll be drafting you to our programs so that we share the burden. So before I go to the chairman, I'll invite the dean. He has a word to share with us. Dean.
Yeah, thank you very much. This one is an advice to especially Dr. Khalid with regards to the implementation of the Women's Bank. I must tell you that the kind of politics that we do, the mindset of the people out there is different from what we are thinking about. The people are impatient. You understand? And sometimes the monies that you are thinking about, the people that you want to target, please, the same people that you are targeting will be the same people who at a point in time, if you are not very careful, they will vote against you because of the money that you've given to them. I'm talking from an experience. Somebody somewhere was able to mobilize 5 million Ghana cedis to give it to women. No interest rate, zero. So that if you pay, they will give it to the other, you know, that kind of process. They end up spending the money and voting against the person at the same time. So that you can't count for the money. So please, the Women's Bank that you want to, it's a good idea. Very, interesting. The vice president, we know that is a baby that she wants to. But please, and please, the same people that you are aspiring to help are the same people, if you are not very careful, they will let you down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. And my brother Khalid, I'm sure you pass on the message to Madam. She used to be our Madam and she's still our Madam. So I now invite our chairman to give us his closing remarks on behalf of the provost. Please do it for him.
Okay, thank you.
Usually the chairman is supposed to have summarized, everything that has happened there, but frankly, I'm not an economist. I'm in development studies and in environment and development. So a lot of the things here that have been said, they themselves in itself is an education for me. So I will not attempt to summarize. We have all been here. So please pardon me for that. But yes, I have to be frank. No, I'll come there. But I have a few issues, based on the discussions, a few issues I want to raise. Not for anybody to respond, but for people to think about as they live here. Now, the first one is a 24-hour economy. I don't know too much economics, but I know of demand and supply. So let's, for instance, say you produce. Okay, so 24 hours, people are producing. Now, if people don't buy the products, can you continue producing? Even your warehouses will be full, and you wouldn't even have space to store what you have produced. So you see, so when people talk about the 24-hour economy, I would also be very interested in these discussions on demand and supply. And then we are talking, okay, we want to produce, we can export. Export where? Who needs the products that you have manufactured? Okay, and even in all these things, what is comparative advantage? What are the issues about comparative advantage in the whole 24-hour economy? That's why this AI powered. Okay, so I think we should think about some of these things. And two, you see, if you say the policy, people are expecting to see a specific amount targeted to the 24-hour economy in the budget, but we don't see. If it's a program, we should be able to quantify it. It doesn't matter. At least we should have an idea. Yes, we should have an idea. So if you tell me that you are devoting 200 million, for instance, 100 million to a 24-hour economy, I should be able to see that of the 100 million, 5 million is going to this particular, let's say, Nkokon Ketenkete, for instance. So at the end of the day, I should be able to calculate and get an idea of where every penny, and like you said, follow the money. So I can follow the money. Okay, so yes, if it's a program or a policy, you should be able to quantify it somehow. Okay, I'll now move on to another issue. See, this issue of, no, I have a few. This issue of, the 24-hour economy, for instance, the parliament not being, government not supplying the document to parliament, etc. And I'm wondering if the whole parliament of Ghana cannot, in court, there's something they call subpoena, is that not it? Where so you are forced to, appear before a panel or, court, etc. So does parliament not have that power to force the government to bring? Or is it simply because of the issue of the supermajority? That's the reason. Okay, then I'll chuck it there. Then I'll come to another issue about this supermajority. You see, when Prof. Khalid was talking about, I think, one particular policy, he said, it went to parliament and parliament. So then I asked myself, if we have a supermajority, can we really be talking about parliament having validated a particular program? Because you have a supermajority. Actually, you could simply have gone with your people and simply voted, and then it's still Parliament of Ghana. So it raises questions about, the validity of some of these things. And I also have been thinking, maybe we did not envisage having a supermajority when, the 1992 Constitution was being developed. Can we now start thinking about a situation where, yes, so if we have a supermajority, do we still need to have a certain percentage of, parties, for instance, from the other side, also ratifying some of these things before they become law? Because as it is now, once you have the supermajority, anything you want to do, you can simply go ahead and do it and pass. So we have passed this policy that says that the president can decide to, do anything that he wants, and then it will carry. Can we also now begin thinking about finding a way of ensuring that, yes, you may have the supermajority, but you still need a certain percentage of people from the other side for, whichever it is, to pass. That's why I said I don't need anybody to respond. I just want us to think about some of these things as we go. So please let me just raise the issues as we go. Now, the issue of, gold and gold board doing very well and all those things. See, we should not forget that gold mining is not a renewable, gold, for instance, resource is not a renewable resource. If we have gold in the ground and we decide not to mine, but then we'll plant cocoa and rather concentrate on adding value to cocoa and all those things, so that for the next 100 years, we can still be farming cocoa on this particular land? Is it not better than simply thinking that, okay, because there is gold there, let's go and get, so now we get 50 million this year, then your government revenue goes up. 10 years after, what can we put the land to? No use. Okay, so maybe we should start thinking more about investing more in the renewables. Okay, so because then those are renewable. If we are going to get, let's say 20% every year from what we could have from mining gold, but then we can stay on it for, let's say, the next 50 years. Maybe these are questions we need to be asking ourselves. And well, that credit matter, I was going to go say something about it, but now I'll skip. Now, an interesting thing, I did some work, okay, and I'm not going to mention any name because of the security implications and all that. But there's an area in Ghana where people do a lot of, illegal mining, and it's very close to the Côte d'Ivoire border. That's all I'm going to say. Now, when you get there, there's a spot where there's a tree. They will tell you, oh, this tree, the right side of the tree is Côte d'Ivoire, the left side is Ghana. Now, when the Ivorian, the rebels, in fact, they were telling me, when the rebels want to come into Ghana, because they cannot bring their weapons into Ghana, what they will do is, there was a chop bar on the Ghana side, a chop bar. So they will leave their weapons on the Côte d'Ivoire side, leave one person to take care of the weapons. Then they just walk across the border to the Ghana side, eat, their fufu and whatever, and then walk across, pick their guns, and then they are into the bush. So you see, when we talk about gold and preventing smuggling and all those things, knowing what I know, I just laugh. And in fact, those illegal miners even told me that the Ivorian border, whatever, what they'll do is, when they see there's an area where, the people have found gold, then they simply can say, well, this is part of Côte d'Ivoire. So they'll move all the Ghanaian illegal miners away from there, and then Ivorian illegal miners will start mining that particular area. When the Ghanaians now attempt to resist, they tell, well, we are security agents, we don't deal with individuals. If you have an issue, go and report to your government for the, the security or border commission or somebody. We don't, it's like we don't negotiate with individuals. And that's what they are doing in that particular area. Like I said, I'm not going to mention. So when we talk about illegal, smuggling of gold, etc., and gold board having stamped, well, maybe within the central part of Ghana, it may be difficult. But in those areas that are along the border, people just walk. And they are in other areas carrying all kinds of things that they have. Now, my last point. And this one, I picked it, actually I didn't know that people who are very poor they can share their poverty or something. Dr. Raymond, you said something. And then it set me thinking about a song I had heard earlier, some time ago. Culture, we all know culture. Joseph Hill, is that correct? He has a song, and there's a refrain in the song, or the chorus. It says, share your riches with the poor before they share their poverty with you. Thank you very much.
So on that culture note, right. So on that culture note, because I didn't know you could sing culture like that. Henceforth, we meet and share some reggae songs. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's do it for our chairman. From chemistry, he joined economics. So thank you once again for that. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do an exercise. Don't take to heart. We're going to present some pins to this discrimination should have passed me. We're going to present some pins to those who attended University of Cape Coast. I wouldn't say alumni. And so before that, if Chairman will permit me, I will go over what I've been given to acknowledge a few persons here for want of time. And so, in no special order, Our chairperson, Professor Emmanuel Tinkrine, he represented the provost. He is also the Dean, School of Development Studies. Won't you clap for him? And so we have Dean, School of Economics, Professor Isaac Dasmani. Mr. Ebenezer Agbe, College Registrar, Chills, College of Humanities and Legal Studies, also former acting registrar of this very university. Sir, we are grateful. Honorable Kojo Opon Kruma MP of Wasia Iribi, somebody just came to me, Unimsoye fellow, and I said, I know. He said, can't answer Wako. So, fellow, we are grateful. Yes. Dr. Sharif M. Khalid, Economic Advisor to the Vice President, former SRC President, we are grateful for coming. Regards to Madam, and from time to time, Ambassador Kakra. Mr. Koridboti, Manager, Microeconomics, the other one I can't see it properly. I see Investor, GCB, correct, you are GCB Capital or something. Professor William Godfrey, I didn't know about the Godfrey Prof today, I know Bravo Insedu, Associate Professor, School of Economics. Dr. Raymond E. Kofinti, Senior Lecturer, School of Economics. Professor Jerry Ninoni, Dean, School of Nursing. Dean, we are grateful you have sat through till now. And our host for the morning stroke afternoon, Dr. Kanta, we are grateful. Mr. Gideon Kwansa, our Grassack President, we are grateful. Next time, bring more of your colleagues to our programs. Professor Isaac Bentum, HOD Economic Studies. I think he's left. He left because he saw a Manchester United man hosting the program. He's a Chelsea fan, so he's run away. Professor Emmanuel Asma Brocco, grateful. Professor Jacob Nunu, HOD Applied Economics, Prof. We are thankful. And to my big brother, if I don't say so, if he sees me, I have a problem. Professor Mark Kojo Ama. And our reporter who could not have the opportunity to present whatever he noted, we are grateful, and I'm sure you put it on an appropriate platform for us to assess. Dr. Joshua Sebu, we are grateful for that. So Dean and then HOD Chairman, if you indulge me, you could come and do the presentation of those pins for us. All right. So, Khalid, Kojo, and then Khalid, please. No, in any particular order, please come for. Maybe, please, the cameraman wants to take a photograph of that, so. I'll take it. So, Dean, HOD, and our ladies, we are grateful, and to our brothers, grateful for accepting our pins. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust that we have all sat for a long time, and I'm from Teshin, but the fancies will say, Oba Safa, Ukofi, Kojo, Nyana. That's right. So time for us to go. But before we go, I'll call on the Osofo President to give us the closing prayer. So, Bracco, please do it for us. Yes.
Hey, Judge, can we all be upstanding, please? Yeah. What I do very well is I sing, but I think I don't want to do it here. So Please, let's close our eyes. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for giving us this day. We thank you for a successful program. We thank you for bringing our guests, our panelists safely from Accra to join us. We thank you for everything that you enabled us to do today. We thank you for the questions that came in. We thank you for the answers. We thank you for the economy of Ghana. We thank you for Parliament. We thank you for the executive, for the judiciary, for different arms of government. We thank you for UCC. We thank you for our lives, for the School of Economics, and for the departments in the School of Economics. Our prayer is that you continue to equip us with everything that we need, even to build this economy that we have. We also pray that as our guests go up, and for those who have also joined and are traveling back, you take them safely to wherever they are going. You continue to keep us, continue to preserve our lives, continue to bless us in everything that we'll do. We thank you for a good day. We bless you. In Jesus' name, we have prayed with thanksgiving. Amen.
Thank you very much. It couldn't have been better for a singer to pray. Please, our panelists, Dean, and our dignitaries will